Chapter 798. When he entered the underground space, Wang Sheng realized that it had changed a lot. Every alchemy room had been refurbished. The biggest change was the addition of a ventilation array for each alchemy room. This was because Wang Sheng had mentioned before that the air here might contain a trace of toxin. If one were to refine pills here for a long time, it would not only be bad for the body, but the pills refined would also be slightly toxic. Earth fire was good stuff, but not everything in the earth fire was good stuff. There was no need for Wang Sheng to use chemical methods to verify it. The faint smell of sulfur was enough to explain everything. Not only did the alchemy room have a ventilation array, but the entire underground space had 4 to 5 ventilation openings. Standing in the underground space, one could feel a faint breeze caressing one's face. It was very comfortable. The original smell of sulfur and earth fire had faded to the point where it was almost impossible to smell. Only Wang Sheng's nose was capable of smelling that choking odor. The largest alchemy room's array had been broken by an expert. More than a year's time was enough for a few array formation experts to study it thoroughly. As Wang Sheng had expected, there were about 100 people in the underground space. The earth fire did not go out all year round, and the alchemy furnace above had always been used. In the past year or so, Laojun Taoist Temple had refined tens of thousands of various pills here. Some are slightly more ordinary, while some required more time and skills, and so on. Not only can this place stimulate cultivation, but it's also a very good place for alchemy. Old Taoist Ling Su explained, when you left, those alchemy disciples had just been sent over, and they were only of the ordinary level. But now, any one of them can be considered a mid-level alchemist. For the time being, they haven't reached the level of being able to refine top-level pills, but middle-level pills can't stump them. Wang Sheng was not surprised at all. There was an earth fire here that did not go out all year round, and there were so many alchemy furnaces. Who knew how much fuel was saved for alchemy? It could be said that under the situation of taking turns to practice, it would be hard not to improve. How high was the cost of alchemy outside? For an ordinary alchemy furnace, just the fuel consumption alone was not a small figure. In addition, one had to control the flame temperature and so on. A person refining alchemy pills would need at least 4 or 5 people to serve them, adding firewood and controlling the fire's spiritual energy. How fast could it be? Not only did they save a lot of costs, but they also saved a lot of money by using medicinal herbs that were harvested in the land of 1,000 extremities. There were at least 6 people from the Qing cohort standing guard here, and 2 of them were at the same level as Qing Chen. Every time he concocted pills, he would have the guidance of an expert of this level. How many detours would he have to take? How much time was saved? It would be strange if his alchemy skills did not improve. After staying in the underground palace for a day, Wang Sheng and old Taoist Ling Su finally left the camp after seeing that it had completely become a training camp for lousy Taoist temple's disciples. There was even a small lousy temple being built outside. With 6 experts of the Qing cohort standing guard and the protection of the formation, there should not be any problems in the periphery of the land of 1,000 extremities. Wang Sheng and old Taoist Ling Su entered the core of the land of 1,000 extremities without having to think about the direction or the way to enter. They went straight ahead and avoided the extremely powerful formation. In less than a day, they had reached the edge of the snow basin. Kid, are you really going to start killing when you meet someone? Old Taoist Ling Su specially confirmed before entering the snow basin. Aren't you afraid of feeling guilty? What's there to feel guilty about? Wang Sheng laughed. This is the fief that the emperor gave me. You can only come in when I let you in. I didn't let you in, but you came in on your own. Don't blame me for being rude. Old Taoist, if you can't figure it out, just treat this as the lousy temple's scripture depository. What would you do if someone barged in without permission? Got it. The old Taoist nodded. When Wang Sheng told him that he wanted to kill someone, old Taoist Ling Su would definitely agree first. Moreover, if they met someone, he would definitely make the first move. Wang Sheng had no doubt about this. However, it would be even more perfect if the old Taoist could kill someone without any psychological burden. Also, old Taoist, don't think that I'm picking a fight. Wang Sheng further explained to old Taoist Ling Su, "Trust me, if we meet someone, they will definitely make the first move." The old Taoist was not a fool. He immediately understood Wang Sheng's words after thinking about it. Those who could enter were definitely experts in the legendary realm, or at least in the late stages. If they suddenly met a stranger, their first reaction would definitely be to silence them. Who would allow others to know about this secret? If they really did meet, then so be it. If they did, then the other party would definitely make a move. Even if they knew that it was Wang Sheng, it would still be the same. Wang Sheng could not have brought a large number of man-eating ants with him. Although Wang Sheng was cooperating well with the major vassal states, if they could kill Wang Sheng in the core of the Land of Thousand Despair, the experts of the major vassal states would definitely not let go of the opportunity. Which vassal state would be willing to enter the core of the Land of Thousand Despair only after Wang Sheng's approval? Exchange code JWC6TZ. Before entering, Wang Sheng had prepared a large piece of animal skin and recorded the distribution of the formation on the Peerless Treasure Map. Mayer had once given Wang Sheng a map of the formation, but Wang Sheng had not yet been to the area marked on the map. It was possible that he could only complete the map with Mayer's map after obtaining it. The main purpose of this trip was to cultivate and draw the map, so Wang Sheng and the old Taoist did not go deep into the forest immediately. Instead, they went about 5 kilometers away from the edge of the forest and then began to circle around the edge of the snow basin. They first completed the topography and the formation distribution of the surrounding area. After walking along the edge of the snow basin for 2 days, Wang Sheng and the old Taoist found an expert active in the core of the Land of Thousand Despair. It seemed that he had been there for some time and was on his way out. Unfortunately, he did not find any traces of Wang Sheng and the old Taoist Ling Su. He was stepping on the waist-deep snow and struggling to move to the edge of the forest. Suddenly, this unfamiliar expert stood on the spot, vigilantly observing his surroundings. The tracks left by Wang Sheng and the old Taoist Ling Su in the snow did not disappear immediately. He had already noticed them when he reached the area. "Who's there?" shouted the expert as soon as he took out his weapon. Wang Sheng's hand, which was holding the weapon, suddenly reached out from under the snow and grabbed it firmly. Before the expert could react, the back of his neck was grabbed by another hand. It was the hand of the old Taoist Ling Su. In just a moment, the expert lost consciousness and his neck hung limply. From the beginning to the end, he had only seen 2 snow tracks in the distance. He did not expect that Wang Sheng and the old Taoist Ling Su had already moved hundreds of meters under the snow and were lying in ambush on the path he had to pass through. The expert of the legendary realm had been captured in one fell swoop. Chapter 799. How could an expert who could represent his family to enter the core region of the Land of Thousand Despair be afraid of death, or someone who could be easily interrogated? Wang Sheng and old Taoist Ling Su had captured this expert, but after waking him up a few times and interrogating him, they gave up on trying to find out his identity and where he had gone to. Wang Sheng had stripped him of all his belongings, leaving only his underwear. All his storage rings and other belongings had also been plundered by Wang Sheng. Finally, Wang Sheng gave him a quick death by using his own weapon to cut open his carotid artery. The corpse did not need to be disposed of, as the smell of blood would quickly attract large and small demon beasts, which would then devour the corpse. Wang Sheng and old Taoist Ling Su quickly left the area after cutting open the carotid artery of the expert, so as to avoid being surrounded by demon beasts attracted by the smell of blood. "This guy is from a Xia family," Wang Sheng said to old Taoist Ling Su while looking through the items in the expert's storage ring. Based on Wang Sheng's experience, Wang Sheng was able to find some very secret marks in the storage ring of the expert, which indicated the identity of the expert. "Is his cultivation at the late legendary stage?" Wang Sheng asked. "Almost," old Taoist Ling Su replied. His eyes were fixed on the surroundings while he was speaking, observing the movements in the surroundings. "This guy has been here for about 5 or 6 days, and he didn't dare to go to the innermost area." Wang Sheng observed the traces of ice and snow on the protective clothing and judged He went at most 30 miles in and wandered around this area. He's a cautious guy. He is also a lucky guy, old Taoist Ling Su said. If he was not lucky, then there was no way to explain how an expert at the late legendary stage could survive in the core region of the Land of Thousand Despair for 5 or 6 days without any injuries. Not everyone was like Wang Sheng. And Wang Sheng had to admit that this guy was really lucky. Maybe he had followed some expert here, and the expert in front of him had already dealt with the ferocious demon beast. No matter what, this was the end of his adventure. We'll build an igloo 10 miles ahead. Wang Sheng looked around and sensed the situation. Then he told old Taoist Ling Su about his goal for the day. The purpose of entering the grounds of Thousand Despair was not only to draw a map, but also to cultivate. After journeying for 2 days straight, Wang Sheng could also feel the faint will in the core of the grounds of Thousand Despair. He decided to strike while the iron was hot, resting and cultivating at the same time. Old Taoist Ling Su had seen Wang Sheng build an igloo the last time. This time, the two of them worked together effortlessly. Soon, they built 2 relatively spacious 2-story igloo that could easily accommodate 2 people. Not only did it conceal their auras, but it was also quite warm. A burning flame licked the bottom of a hanging iron pot. The demon beast meat inside was boiling in the boiling water. Old Taoist Ling Su's hands were on the handles of the iron pot, and he was constantly injecting spiritual qi into the pot, using it to cook the meat thoroughly. Without an expert cooking with spiritual energy, ordinary chefs would not even be able to cook the demon beast meat. Wang Sheng used ice to build 2 ice beds at the side. On top of them were several thick layers of animal skin and duck-down insulation. This way, when the two of them slept, they would not feel cold. Old Taoist, you said this faint will. What is it? Wang Sheng sat on the newly built bed and looked at old Taoist Ling Su. I can only vaguely feel it, but I can't feel anything more. Should I go in a bit more and try? Take your time. Old Taoist Ling Su smelled the increasingly fragrant aroma coming from the fire. What do you think cultivation is? Don't you know how to progress step by step? In terms of orthodox cultivation, Wang Sheng definitely could not win against old Taoist Ling Su. Hence, he obediently sat down and listened to old Taoist Ling Su's guidance. You can vaguely feel that will now. It should be about the 7th stage. Old Taoist Ling Su said this very naturally. Suddenly, he seemed to realize something was wrong. He turned to Wang Sheng and asked, "You're cultivating the scripture of Tao." "The scripture of Tao. Maintaining tranquility," Wang Sheng corrected him. "Exchange code NVWD8W. You're only at the 7th stage. How can you cultivate the scripture of Tao?" Old Taoist Ling Su's face was filled with shock as he asked. "The scripture of the Tao requires 81 meridians. How did you combine the 2 cultivation techniques and still reduce the number of meridians?" Speaking of changing techniques, old Taoist Ling Su had done it many times when he was young. However, it was limited to Taoist techniques that he was very familiar with and had been cultivating for at least 10 years. Taoist techniques were originally neutral and peaceful. A slight change would not cause too much of a backlash. Coupled with the fact that he was very familiar with the route of cultivation, it was possible to change it. However, Wang Sheng had to cultivate from the beginning. Even if Wang Sheng had the opportunity to see the scripture of Tao the last time he went back, it had only been a short time. In addition, Wang Sheng had to change the technique to suit his acupuncture points. In just a short period of half a year, Wang Sheng had actually done it without changing the characteristics of the scripture of Tao. This was simply impossible. "How many acupuncture points do you have now?" Before Wang Sheng could answer, old Taoist Ling Su asked worriedly. He knew Wang Sheng's experience. From the beginning, Wang Sheng did not have many acupuncture points. Every time, he would always choose the technique that required the least acupuncture points to cultivate. Now, he was asking in such detail because he was afraid that Wang Sheng would go the wrong way. More than 100. Wang Sheng could completely feel the worry in old Taoist Ling Su's heart. It was very warm. With a smile, Wang Sheng told him the number of his acupuncture points. However, he did not dare to go into detail. He only gave an approximate number. How is this possible? Old Taoist Ling Su's eyes widened. Not long ago, Junior Brother did not have enough acupuncture points. How did he suddenly have more than 100 acupuncture points? Wang Sheng shrugged. He could not explain. However, seeing a super expert so shocked, Wang Sheng also felt a sense of accomplishment. After a while, old Taoist Ling Su finally calmed down and accepted the fact. There was no need for Wang Sheng to lie. It was meaningless. In that case, there would be no problem for Wang Sheng to cultivate the Taoist scripture of tranquility. Even if Wang Sheng used the simplest method, cultivating the Taoist scripture of tranquility with a portion of his acupuncture points, and cultivating the Taoist scripture of tranquility with a portion of his acupuncture points, it would be enough. Wang Sheng seemed to have thought of a question and asked old Taoist Ling Su curiously, "By the way, old Taoist, how many acupuncture points do you have now? Would you be surprised if I said, I have more than 100? Old Taoist Ling Su asked. No. Wang Sheng smiled and shook his head. I'm just curious. Do you have more than 110 or 120? 129. Old Taoist Ling Su suddenly raised his head and gave the answer. Then, he asked, more or less than you? More than me. Wang Sheng gave old Taoist Ling Su a thumbs up. In that case, old Taoist, you should have 9 acupuncture points at enlightenment. Every time you advance, you will have 10 more. Now, you're a 12-stage expert. I'm impressed. Chapter 800. Regarding his own cultivation realm, old Taoist Ling Su had almost never told anyone about it. Even the Grand Abbey Dean had only casually guessed from the rumors of a few seniors that he had surpassed the 9th degree realm, but he did not know exactly what realm he had reached. As for the number of acupuncture points, who else would know except for the person himself? It was only because the old Taoist priest's relationship with Wang Sheng had reached this point that he would tell Wang Sheng about it. If it were someone else, even the Grand Abbey Dean, who had been recognized by the old Taoist Ling Su would not tell him this. Old Taoist Ling Su looked at Wang Sheng's thumb, shook his head slightly, and sighed. His face was bleak. Maybe this is the end of my life. From Wang Sheng's point of view, he felt lonely at the top. Wang Sheng could not help but ask, Old Taoist, what are your chances of winning if you were to fight those super demon beasts now? Last time, the old Taoist was not confident. It had already been half a year. There should be some changes, right? We're evenly matched. There should be no problem. Old Taoist Ling Su was very clear about his own understanding. He made a serious judgment. In terms of cultivation realm, those demon beasts are definitely weaker than me. But they have no feelings and only know how to kill. I'm not good at this, so it's more or less a tie. Maybe if I kill a few more people with you this time and get more murderous, I'll be more confident. Wang Sheng nodded. That was right. Based on Wang Sheng's understanding of the old Taoist, he would only kill those who had committed heinous crimes or offended the Grand Supreme Lord Temple. Wang Sheng said that he would bring the old Taoist to kill, and the old Taoist did not refuse. So this was the root of it. Old Taoist Ling Su was definitely a proud man. He was so proud that he didn't even take the Grand Abbot of Laojun Temple seriously. The old Taoist would probably be too lazy to even take the initiative to kill a few juniors whose cultivation was far inferior to his. Perhaps only the experts and powerful demonic beasts in the core of the land of 1,000 despair could arouse the old Taoist's desire to make a move. What is that willpower inside? Wang Sheng asked again. He believed that the old Taoist definitely had a deeper understanding than he did. It should be an illusory aura left behind by a peerless expert when he was cultivating. The old Taoist looked in the direction of the core of the land of 1,000 despair, his face full of longing. I'm afraid that's the world's #1 expert from back then. Old Taoist, can you leave behind such an imposing manner? Wang Sheng did not feel that the old Taoist's answer was illusory at all. Wasn't it said on earth that Bodhidharma would leave behind a shadow after meditating for 9 years? What Wang Sheng cared about was how strong the person who left behind the imposing manner was, so he directly compared it to the old Taoist. This time, the old Taoist Ling Su did not answer. Instead, he directly shook his head. I'm still far from it. Then why are you still talking about living for so long? Wang Sheng unhappily threw a sentence at the old Taoist. There's clearly a path ahead. Why don't you walk over and take a look? That's easy for you to say. The old Taoist directly rolled his eyes at Wang Sheng. Is that a path ahead? It's a desolate mountain. Climb up. Wang Sheng did not look like he was joking at all. He said to the old Taoist, "Who cares what it is? Just climb up. I can give you the entire Tao Te Ching. If you don't have such an indomitable, imposing manner, how can you climb up? Let's wait for a while." The old Taoist Ling Su turned to Wang Sheng and said with a smile, "Wait until I have thoroughly mastered the 9 words incantation and Tai Chi. Then I'll ask for the Tao Te Ching." He had just said it was a desolate mountain, but at this moment, in the eyes of the old Taoist Ling Su, there was clearly an imposing manner in which he would go forward even if there were millions of people. Wang Sheng immediately laughed. What the old Taoist said was different for what he thought. It was rare for the old Taoist to have such an expression. "All right, whenever you need it, you can ask me for it." Wang Sheng agreed with a smile. Then he asked curiously, "Old Taoist, what cultivation method are you practicing now?" The old Taoist had 1 more acupuncture points than Wang Sheng. The Taoist canon was definitely not enough for the old Taoist to practice. Wang Sheng was quite curious about the old Taoist cultivation method. If the old Taoist had a suitable cultivation method, he might be able to inspire Wang Sheng. After all, if Wang Sheng advanced again, he would have 256 acupuncture points. It's still the Taoist canon. The old Taoist still did not hide anything from Wang Sheng. The 2 of them could be said to be the 2 most advanced cultivation methods in Taoism, so they could communicate with each other. Usually, the old Taoists did not have many opportunities to communicate with the younger generation. There were many masters of the Qing generation, including a group of legendary peak, but they could not break through that barrier. As for the old Taoist's method of breaking through the barrier, he could not communicate with them. Finally, he had a devilish friend like Wang Sheng. Although his cultivation was not high, the number of acupuncture points he had was enough to challenge the old Taoist. They really had more and more in common. Have you ever tried to put a few acupuncture points very close to each other, then treat them as one, and then use the Taoist canon? The old Taoist was able to break through the 12th realm because he had a deep accumulation. "I used 100 years to polish the Taoist canon, and I only succeeded 10 years ago. Which one did you use?" You can't just use the Taoist canon and mind of calmness separately, right? Of course not. Wang Sheng's interest was piqued when he heard what the old Taoist said. By treating several acupoints as one acupoint, he could naturally use all the additional acupoints. This might be a direction for him in the future. Thinking of this, Wang Sheng hurriedly asked, "Then, how many acupoints can you treat as one?" Exchange code ZE848M5. The old Taoist Ling Su replied without thinking, "From the simplest 2, then 3, 4, and now 5. Why, do you want to try?" Wang Sheng nodded without hesitation. Even the Taoist canon's mind of calmness only used 117 acupuncture points. The Taoist canon used 81 acupuncture points, and the mind of calmness used 36 acupuncture points. The remaining 11 acupuncture points were wasted. Since he had this method, of course he would use it. The old Taoist did not hide anything from Wang Sheng. Since Wang Sheng was interested, he told Wang Sheng all his experiences and lessons in cultivation. He emphasized some points that needed special attention. By the time the old Taoist finished his story, the 2 of them had already surrounded the hot pot and devoured all the demon beast meat with their 4 hands. "Old Taoist, help me take a look at my cultivation method." Wang Sheng and the old Taoist friendship could be said to have been through life and death. The old Taoist told him his cultivation method. Wang Sheng was not selfish and told him about his Taoist canon's mind of calmness. However, old Taoist, you can't pass it on to more people. If the royal family finds out about the mind of calmness, I'm afraid there will be a lot of trouble. Of course, the old Taoist Ling Su knew this, so he nodded slightly. Then, Wang Sheng began to tell him about the cultivation method that had taken the little person several months to optimize and integrate. Chapter 801. In this world, old Taoist Ling Su was definitely the most powerful cultivation genius that Wang Sheng had ever seen. For the time being, there was no one else like him. The Taoist scripture's heart of calmness had been optimized by the battle consciousness avatar for several months. Wang Sheng had cultivated by himself. Even though the battle consciousness avatar had simulated the cultivation situation many times, it still took him several days to complete the first weekday of cultivation. It took Wang Sheng almost 10 days to complete the 9-week day of cultivation. Wang Sheng explained it to old Taoist Ling Su, but only once. Wang Sheng swore that he had only explained the cultivation route and the distribution of acupuncture points. He had not explained the important points to pay attention to during cultivation at all. However, after this explanation, old Taoist did not bother to clean up after finishing the demon beast meat. He sat on the ice bed and began to cultivate. Phew, 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 phew. Wang Sheng counted the breaths of old Taoist Ling Su. In less than 100 breaths' time, old Taoist opened his eyes. Old Taoist Ling Su's eyes suddenly shone with wisdom that was completely different from before. He closed his eyes again and reflected on it for a while before letting out a long sigh. Amazing! Old Taoist Ling Su's first words were words of praise. He turned his head and looked at Wang Sheng as if he was looking at a monster. He had long since known that Wang Sheng was an out-and-out monstrous genius. F***CK. How could Wang Sheng not notice the look in old Taoist Ling Su's eyes? That was the effect of the heart of calmness to improve one's brain power. The problem was that old Taoist Ling Su had used less than 100 breath time. Other than sighing in admiration, what else could Wang Sheng do? It took an entire day for the tiny person with combat awareness to cultivate the mind-guarding tranquility cultivation technique to split. As for Wang Sheng's cultivation of the scripture of the way scripture of guarding tranquility, up until now, he still hadn't reached the first stage of increasing his brain power. Instead, he felt more energetic every day. But that was all. But old Taoist Ling Su had only listened to Wang Sheng's explanation of the technique once, then immediately practiced it and succeeded. This caused Wang Sheng to have the urge to strangle Taoist Ling Su's neck and force him to spit out all his cultivation techniques. In the face of the old Taoist, Wang Sheng could be said to be in awe of him. This was too shocking, wasn't it? Did it have to be so ridiculous? No wonder people say that comparing goods leads to throwing away, and comparing people leads to death. Wang Sheng had long felt a kind of deathly shame. He had lost too much face. Give me some more time to go back and cultivate in seclusion for a while. I should be able to completely understand the 9 symbolic words in Taiji Fist. Old Taoist Ling Su was very happy and confident. If nothing goes wrong within the next 1 or 2 years, I, old Taoist, will be able to advance another level. The current old Taoist was no longer the old Taoist who had said that his life would end here not long ago. Instead, he was the old Taoist who was completely confident and had the belief that he would win. What about facing those super demonic beasts now? Wang Sheng asked again. One-on-one, they're dead meat. Old Taoist Ling Su said calmly, but his tone revealed a strong sense of confidence. Wang Sheng could feel it. What else could Wang Sheng say? Other than giving a thumbs up, there was nothing else he could say or do. The old Taoist saw Wang Sheng as a demon, but little did he know that Wang Sheng saw the old Taoist as the real demon. You don't seem surprised that I can break through to the 9th stage. Why? Old Taoist Ling Su calmed down. His temperament seemed to have changed after he finished cultivating the mind purity technique. He was no longer the sloppy old Taoist, but a man of great virtue. What's wrong with that? Wang Sheng knew why Ling Su asked this. In this world, the 9th stage was the limit. This was common sense. Facing an expert who had broken this common sense, Wang Sheng was actually unmoved. Wasn't this strange? The thing that most people were curious about was Wang Sheng's origins. Ever since I obtained my soul and started my soul cultivation for the first time, I knew that an expert would definitely be able to break through the limits of the 9th stage realm. Wang Sheng replied casually. What? Old Taoist Ling Su asked curiously. Exchange code MYPWNH. Do you remember the method to upgrade the spirit I sold in Carefree City? Wang Sheng asked Old Taoist. Didn't you say that your spirit is a part of the spirit that can be upgraded? Old Taoist Ling Su had heard of Wang Sheng's story in Carefree City. There were even people who attended the temple of Lao Jun, so he naturally knew what Wang Sheng had said. Obviously not because of that. Wang Sheng smiled. Before this, what did I say? Old Taoist Ling Su was lost in his memories. It was something that happened a few years ago, and it was someone else who told him about it. Old Taoist Ling Su had to think about it carefully. If I were to say that I relied on my firm and unyielding belief that my origin soul would definitely be able to advance, would everyone believe me? These were Wang Sheng's original words at that time. Now, Old Taoist Ling Su recalled them. After thinking about it, Old Taoist laughed. The first thing you said at that time was actually the secret of upgrading your spirit. Unfortunately, no one believed you. Old Taoist Ling Su couldn't help but laugh. Of course, he wasn't laughing at Wang Sheng, but those buyers who heard the real answer but didn't believe it at all. Naturally, there were representatives of the temple of Lao Jun. By the way, Old Taoist, since you're so powerful, why didn't you tell the Grand Abbey Dean and the others in the temple of Lao Jun? Wang Sheng was also curious, so he asked the Old Taoist instead. Suddenly, Wang Sheng remembered that the relationship between Old Taoist Ling Su and the Taoists in the temple of Lao Jun was not as harmonious as it was now. They didn't understand each other. In this case, it was normal for the Old Taoist not to say anything. Pretend I didn't ask. Wang Sheng smiled awkwardly and brushed off the question. Forget it, I won't ask. Old Taoist Ling Su knew that Wang Sheng had a lot of secrets. This time, the two of them exchanged the secrets of cultivation in depth, and both felt that they had benefited a lot. Old Taoist Ling Su urged Wang Sheng. Don't you want to cultivate? Why don't you hurry up? Wang Sheng had long since wanted to know how great the benefits of cultivating in the core of the grounds of Thousand Despair were. Hearing this, he quickly sat down on his ice bed and entered a state of cultivation. With the Old Taoist Ling Su protecting him, Wang Sheng was not afraid, even if a super demonic beast came. He could cultivate in peace here with peace of mind. Wang Sheng knew that he could not be like the Old Taoist Ling Su, who could cultivate a new cultivation method immediately. Even if there was a skill to combine the acupoints, Wang Sheng would not test it immediately. He would first let the battle-conscious little people calculate and optimize it. He would cultivate in peace and see the effects of cultivating in the core of the land of Thousand Despair. After 9-week day, Wang Sheng breathed a sigh of relief and opened his eyes. He immersed his consciousness into the soul space and looked around. Suddenly, he showed a look of surprise. Chapter 802. In the soul space, the big pool was still there, and so was a transparent black viper. However, the mist in the pool had become different. The mist at the bottom of the pool, which used to be shallow, had now become a full pool. The white mist churned, going in and out of the black viper's mouth and nose. Several colorful filaments appeared on the black viper's body. The speed at which the black viper breathed in and out the black viper's mist had also increased a lot, but it seemed that it had not completely absorbed all the spiritual energy in the mist. This speed alone was more than 10 times faster than when Wang Sheng was in the Duke's mansion. If it was calculated according to the amount of mist, it was clearly more than 10 times faster. Wang Sheng's complete cultivation was already equivalent to more than 10 days in the Duke's mansion. No wonder people said that cultivating in the land of thousand extremes was good. With this kind of cultivation speed, it would be strange if it wasn't good. Looking at the time, only 20 minutes had passed. It was about the same speed as when he was cultivating in the Duke's mansion. Wang Sheng became more and more certain. No matter what, he had to cultivate in the core of the land of thousand extremes for a period of time. It looks like the effect is good. Old Taoist Ling Su had been watching over Wang Sheng. Seeing that Wang Sheng had woken up and seeing his expression, Old Taoist Ling Su said with a smile, The effect is dozens of times better than outside. Wang Sheng also smiled and let out a long sigh. No wonder everyone wants to cultivate in there. The effect is indeed extraordinary. It's fine for a short period of time. Old Taoist Ling Su saw that Wang Sheng already had plans to cultivate here for a long time, so he could not help but remind him, but it's definitely not a long period of time. Why? Wang Sheng asked. With enough spiritual energy, the effect of cultivation is good. Can it be? Or is there any danger? Abundant spiritual energy is a good thing, but there are certain negative effects. Old Taoist Ling Su said, coupled with the stimulation of the martial intent here, the cultivation speed is much faster. However, you should also know that sometimes cultivation isn't always about the faster the better. Is your foundation not solid enough? Wang Sheng asked. That's part of the reason. Ling Su nodded his head and replied, the growth of a human body is a process that follows the growth of one's cultivation. In normal cultivation, the body has enough time to adapt. However, your body will not be able to keep up with the rapid increase in your cultivation in a short period of time. Under the imbalance, your body will be injured. It's like holding a stove to warm yourself. Old Taoist Ling Su looked at the blazing flames and gave an example. If you're in a normal state, you'll feel warm after sitting next to the stove for a while. That's nothing. But if you stay by the fire all the time, you will inevitably be soaked in sweat. Wang Sheng kept nodding as he listened. The logic was simple and easy to understand. Wang Sheng could easily understand it. If I get any closer, and if I stay close for a long time, I might get scalded. Old Taoist Ling Su continued, using the same example. That's not a big deal. Once you get used to hugging the stove and suddenly go outside, what will it feel like? I understand. Wang Sheng nodded. In any case, it's like more haste, less speed, and going too far is as bad as not going far enough, right? Yes, that's exactly what I mean. Old Taoist Ling Su nodded happily. Wang Sheng was a person who could be persuaded. That was enough. Then how long can I stay in there? Wang Sheng asked. 3 months at most, no longer. Old Taoist Ling Su also gave a rough limit. That's enough. Wang Sheng thought for a moment. Anyway, with the stimulation of the martial intent for 3 months, even if I go out, I can still maintain a high speed of cultivation for a period of time. No wonder the 3 great consecrators of the royal family are so strong. This must be the reason. Exchange code WF5JXQ. Old Taoist Ling Su rarely paid attention to secular matters, so Wang Sheng did not mention the rebellion in Beijing to Old Taoist Ling Su, and Old Taoist Ling Su did not ask about it either. Now that the 3 great consecrators' combat power was mentioned, Old Taoist Ling Su could not help but ask about it. Even if it was to prepare for a rainy day, it was necessary to know the strength of the possible enemy. Wang Sheng immediately went over to the fire and told him about the rebellion in Beijing. Of course, that was not all. When Old Taoist Ling Su was not in Beijing, many other things happened, such as the destruction of the victorious Return Nation and Wang Sheng receiving more than 600 beauties. Wang Sheng did not hide these and told him everything. More than 600 beauties? Old Taoist Ling Su looked Wang Sheng up and down, then smiled and shook his head. I couldn't tell. I didn't touch them. Wang Sheng rolled his eyes at Old Taoist Ling Su. Old Taoist was also a naughty guy. Didn't you say that you're a secular person who likes beautiful wives and concubines? Old Taoist teased Wang Sheng. This was what Wang Sheng told Master Lu's disciple when he first met the Old Taoist. He did not expect Old Taoist to remember it. Although it was a joke, his eyes were full of admiration. No feelings. Wang Sheng shook his head. I'm not used to it. Maybe when we get to know each other for a long time and have feelings for each other, then we'll talk about it. You should cultivate first. Old Taoist Ling Su laughed. You can think about these things when you can break through the limits of the 9th stage. Wang Sheng nodded and did not continue the topic. Instead, he asked Old Taoist Ling Su. When the 3 great priests and the old priest were fighting, the surrounding atmosphere was so strong that ordinary people at the peak of the legendary realm could not get close. What realm were they at? Did the old priest break through? How can it be that easy to reach the peak of the legendary realm? Old Taoist Ling Su shook his head. Those who think they are at the peak of the legendary realm are at most in the middle or late stages of the legendary realm. From this stage to the peak of the legendary realm, there will be a huge improvement, and they can kill experts of the previous stage in seconds. As for the old priest, Old Taoist Ling Su paused for a moment when he mentioned the old priest, then continued. I've heard of him. He used to have a good cultivation, but he rarely fought. He should have just broken through, but hasn't been able to consolidate it yet. I heard that he was injured in the land of Thousand Despair. Wang Sheng told him the rumor. It said that it happened decades ago. If that's the case, then it makes sense. Without entering the land of Thousand Despair, without the conviction you have, it would be impossible for him to break through. The three great priests actually won by a hair's breadth. Old Taoist Ling soon nodded and commented, that means that the three of them have followed you to the core of the land of Thousand Despair, but the old priest hasn't. If the old priest had come in before going out, I'm afraid that even the three of you wouldn't have stood a chance. Let's not talk about this anymore. Old Taoist Ling Su ended the conversation between the two of them and reminded Wang Sheng, time is limited. It's better for you to cultivate a few more times here. We'll have to change places tomorrow morning. Chapter 803. Wang Sheng readily accepted the advice and began to cultivate. In one night, Wang Sheng had cultivated 4 times and had already caught up with the day's plan in the Duke's mansion. After 4 complete cultivation sessions, the pool in Wang Sheng's soul origin space was completely different. Previously, Wang Sheng's pool was filled with white mist, but now it had turned into a light gray. Others might not know, but Wang Sheng knew very well that this was the result of the fog being too thick, resulting in such a color. The gray clouds in the sky meant that they were thicker than the white clouds and could block out the sun's rays. With a large pool full of gray fog, Wang Sheng was already very satisfied. This night's cultivation was equivalent to 2 months of cultivation in the Duke's mansion. Early the next morning, Wang Sheng and Old Taoist Ling Su once again embarked on their inspection journey. The ice house was easily turned into snow water by the Old Taoist, and then turned into ice in the cold astral wind. There was no trace of it anymore, and the traces they left behind yesterday had long been blown away by the night's astral wind. Wang Sheng and Old Taoist Ling Su continued to circle around the perimeter of the snowy basin. Wang Sheng and Old Taoist Ling Su walked in a regular pattern, 30 li a day, no more, no less. With this calculation, they would be able to circle around the perimeter once every half a month. At that time, the two of them could enter the inner circle. The two of them lived a very regular life every day. During the day, Wang Sheng was responsible for leading the way and avoiding the threatening monsters. If he really could not avoid them, Old Taoist Ling Su would make a move. Anyway, he was here to practice killing and to practice hardening his heart, so it was on the way. However, the Old Taoist was the Old Taoist. If he could avoid them, he would avoid them. If he could not avoid them, then he would make a move. In his words, these monsters that could not be avoided were fated with the Old Taoist, so naturally, he had to comply with the heavenly Tao. In this regard, Wang Sheng was non-committal. It did not matter how many monsters were killed. The key was that the people inside could not be easily let go. The 30 miles would take Wang Sheng and Old Taoist about 6 or 7 hours. When they arrived, the two of them would make an ice house, then rest comfortably and cultivate at regular intervals. It was mainly because of Wang Sheng. Wang Sheng's cultivation session required over 20 minutes each time. Unlike Old Taoist Ling Su, more than 20 minutes was enough for him to cultivate more than 10 times in a weekday. Wang Sheng admired him, but he did not immediately follow Old Taoist Ling Su's example. One had to know that Old Taoist Ling Su had cultivated the Taoist Canon Heart Sutra for a full 100 years. He had studied every circulation route and acupoint in the cultivation technique down to the bones. To be able to achieve such a cultivation speed, it was the accumulation of work over a long period of time. It was not something that Wang Sheng could achieve just because he was envious. Wang Sheng had only come into contact with the Taoist cultivation method for a few months. Even if the little person with combat awareness helped to deduce and optimize it, which saved Wang Sheng a lot of time, Wang Sheng did not dare to compete with old Taoist Ling Su's 100 years of cultivation. They were not on the same level at all. If they really competed, they would die. Along the way, they did not encounter any other expert from other clans. The two of them did not care about this. After all, this was not their main goal. It was their misfortune to encounter them, but their luck if they did not. Even so, on the 20th day, Wang Sheng and old Taoist Ling Su encountered a lone expert. This time, it was an expert from the Song clan. His cultivation was much stronger than the one they encountered last time. Unfortunately, no matter how strong an expert was, there was only one ending for them when they encountered old Taoist Ling Su, and that was to die with a grudge. The only difference was that before this expert died, he completely released his peak legend rank aura and activated the two super demonic beasts sealed in the ice mountains. From the items on this expert's body, it could be seen that he had been here for more than 20 days. However, he was probably the same as Wang Sheng and Ling Su, searching for something on the periphery. He did not dare to go any deeper. Poor fellow. If he had not been so greedy and left earlier, he would not have met Wang Sheng and Ling Su, who asked him to stay here for so long. He had become a target for Wang Sheng and old Taoist Ling Su. This time, Wang Sheng was determined to clear the area. Without Wang Sheng's permission, no one was allowed to enter. Even Song Yan's subordinates were no exception. As for the 10 legend rank experts from the Gan clan and Shi clan, they must be extremely powerful now. They had stayed here for an entire year. Furthermore, they were in the inner region. The spiritual energy was denser, and their martial will was clearer. However, they would probably encounter the problem that old Taoist Ling Su mentioned. Their bodies would not be able to withstand the imbalance brought about by the rapid increase in cultivation, and they would definitely suffer great damage. But what did this have to do with Wang Sheng? Wang Sheng was already being merciful by letting them stay here. After 20 days, the pool in Wang Sheng's origin spirit space was already filled with black smoke. At every moment, the transparent origin spirit of the Basya was absorbing spiritual energy, adding color to its body. In such a short period of time, its tail had already gained a complete color. Right now, the two of them had already gone another dozen lian, and they started to circle around again. Wang Sheng had already recorded the distribution of the formation in the periphery. Wang Sheng had especially marked out the two areas where the awakened super demonic beasts were. Exchange code KFEK. Wang Sheng had asked the two grandmasters to make skis in Carefree City, but the snow here was too thick. It was more than a meter deep, and it was basically flat ground. Therefore, the skis were not very useful. Instead, it affected their agility. After trying it once, Wang Sheng gave up. Both of them ended up walking. Next time, he could consider making a snowmobile with a large contact area driven by spiritual energy. It should be able to save a lot of energy. However, only Wang Sheng himself or old Taoist Ling Su could enter. If others wanted to enter, they would have to walk. Old Taoist, why do you think ordinary legend rank experts can awaken the frozen superdemonic beasts, but the superdemonic beasts themselves can't awaken their own kind? Wang Sheng asked old Taoist Ling Su while panting in the snow. I've thought about it carefully. Actually, we had some misunderstandings at the beginning. It wasn't the super demonic beasts that were awakened by the aura of a legend rank expert. Old Taoist Ling Su seemed to have thought about this long ago, and he had also consulted some experts. He replied with a slightly uncertain tone, it was the aura of a legend rank expert that opened those sealing formations, and those super demonic beasts were released. This should not explain why the aura of a human could be used, but not the super demonic beasts. Wang Sheng did not ask any more questions. He waited for old Taoist Ling Su to answer. The formation was set up by people. It should have been set up when the formation was set up. Old Taoist Ling Su continued to explain, the aura of a human legend rank expert is slightly different from that of a super demonic beast. It should be a condition of the formation. Otherwise, wouldn't those super demonic beasts be able to break the seal by themselves? Chapter 804. It was certain that demonic beasts did not know how to set up a formation. It had to be a human being. Old Taoist Ling Su's words could barely be considered an explanation, but there were still a lot of questions. For example, did such a super demonic beast really exist 500 years ago? In that case, what kind of person could seal such a super demonic beast? If there really was a super expert more powerful than a super demonic beast, why didn't any of the big clans pass down a method to surpass their limits? No one had any idea how powerful the world's #1 expert was back then. However, the core of the Land of Thousand Extremes was already so dangerous that it had exceeded everyone's expectations. This was only the periphery of the core of the Land of Thousand Extremes. Wang Sheng knew that there was an inner circle at the core of the Land of Thousand Extremes. Once he crossed that line, Wang Sheng could easily control any demonic beast inside. The demonic beast inside could casually slap a peak legendary expert to death. How terrifying would that be? Was the cultivation of the person who set up the Land of Thousand Extremes in the past that high? If Wang Sheng wanted to unravel these secrets, the only thing he could do was to increase his own cultivation base. He had to increase his cultivation base to the point where he wouldn't be bothered by these monsters and be able to deal with all the dangers inside. Of course, it was necessary to use the experts from the big clans as cannon fodder. The days went on. With an igloo to rest every day and old Taoist Ling Su as his protector, Wang Sheng's cultivation grew rapidly. His 128 acupuncture points absorbed spiritual energy like crazy. In a short period of time, Wang Sheng felt that the spiritual energy he had been lacking had increased explosively. In the past, Wang Sheng's attacks were more inclined towards physical attacks, relying on strength, sharpness, and speed. When he got out this time, it was time to find 1 or 2 powerful spiritual energy attacks. In the soul space, the black mist in the pool was growing every day. Similarly, the colors on the Bawei's body were also filling up bit by bit without stopping. After another 20 days, the Bawei's buttocks were basically completely dyed, and it began to spread to its hind legs. During the second 20 days, Wang Sheng and old Taoist Ling Su had already gone 15 miles deep into the Land of Thousand Extremes. The formation marks made during the day were densely packed. After a quick count, there were already more than 200 of them. It was simply unbelievable. Over the next 20 days, they did not encounter a single person. Old Taoist Ling Su had killed at least 30 powerful demonic beasts. Of course, most of these demon beasts had entered the stomachs of Wang Sheng and the old Taoist. After old Taoist Ling Su finished eating the demonic beast meat and rested a few times, he suddenly said to Wang Sheng, "Your circling method is really useful." Wang Sheng was puzzled and waited for old Taoist Ling Su to explain. Now that we've entered the core region of the Land of 1,000 Extremities, the spiritual pressure in the surroundings has increased tremendously, and the spiritual energy in the surroundings has become several times denser. When I'm at the edge, I won't be able to sense anything wrong. If I go deeper, I'll eventually feel uncomfortable. Old Taoist Ling Su went on to explain, "You go in suddenly and then come out suddenly. In a short period of time, you've experienced a drastic rise and fall in the concentration of spiritual energy. This is the reason why your vitality is greatly damaged after you go out." Wang Sheng had not thought of this reason before. At that time, Wang Sheng's cultivation was low, and he did not rely on spiritual energy to improve his realm, so it did not have much impact on Wang Sheng. However, whether it was the experts from the big families, the red card killers, or the 3 great imperial consecrators who followed Wang Sheng in and out, they all showed signs of severe damage to their vitality. The only exception was probably old Taoist Ling Su. His cultivation was too high, and he no longer cared about the concentration of spiritual energy. This time, it will take you more than 10 days to go 5 kilometers deep and make a big circle. This will allow your body to adapt to the concentration of spiritual energy at this stage. Then, go deeper and continue to go around for more than 10 days. Basically, your body will gradually adapt to the increase in the concentration of spiritual energy. Old Taoist Ling Su said in a very appreciative tone, "This avoids the fluctuations in the concentration of spiritual energy, and it will not damage the body's foundation." Wang Sheng seemed to have heard of this principle on Earth. When he was training to dive in the army, didn't it mean that he had to slowly dive and rise to give his body time to adapt to the water pressure and release the nitrogen in his blood? It was exactly the same as what he was doing now. Wang Sheng did not mean to go this way, but to draw a map. But by a stroke of luck, he could be considered to have found the right path. After all, he was going to rely on his spiritual energy cultivation to travel the world in the future, so he had to pay attention to this aspect. Actually, it's mainly when we go back. Wang Sheng helped old Taoist Ling Su sum up. When we go out, everyone can't wait to get out of this dangerous place, so the speed is faster. A rapid decrease in the concentration of spiritual energy is more harmful than a rapid increase. Ling Su nodded. He had not thought about the problem of going out, but Wang Sheng's words clearly made sense. It looked like the two of them had to be careful when they went out. Since he was prepared, Wang Sheng also made his preparations. He would continue like this for another 20 days. In total, he would walk in for 2 months. For the remaining month, he would slowly walk out from the periphery, try his best not to cause any damage to his body. After going around for another 10 days, the two of them hit the jackpot again. They met an expert pathfinder. That expert was very unlucky. He had already been discovered by a ferocious demonic beast and was in the middle of a fight. From afar, Wang Sheng shot an arrow at that expert and left him to the demonic beast to deal with. Wang Sheng was too lazy to even care about his background. The next day, after Wang Sheng marked another formation on his piece of animal skin, he suddenly realized that, with the addition of this formation, the distribution of a few formations matched a corner of the formation distribution map that Mayer had given him. After finding a place to stay in advance and building an igloo, Wang Sheng and old Taoist Ling Su spread out the big map, then added the map that Mayer had given them, and started to compare them one by one. The results were very satisfying. The distribution of more than 6 formations was consistent on the 2 maps. In other words, Mayer's map could finally be incorporated into the big map. Old Taoist Ling Su was not interested in the map that Wang Sheng had obtained from who knows where. The only thing he was concerned about now was the secret of the core area. Unfortunately, Wang Sheng would not let him go in to explore. This made old Taoist Ling Su feel like he had entered a treasure mountain only to return empty-handed. In the next few days, they were basically verifying whether or not the array formation on Mayer's map really existed. Fortunately, in 10 days, the two of them discovered more than 30 formations of various sizes, which matched exactly with the markings on Mayer's map. This map was real. It was indeed the map of the formation distribution of the core area of the land of Thousand Despair. However, when Mayer got her hands on this map, she was only the young master of Baoqin Yutang. Where did she get this map from? It seemed that he would have to ask Mayer about the origin of this map when he got back. Chapter 805. By the time they had verified more than half of the formation map, Wang Sheng and old Taoist Ling Su had basically been here for 2 months. According to the concerns that old Taoist Ling Su had mentioned, it was time for them to leave. Wang Sheng was not greedy. He knew that there were no shortcuts in cultivation. Therefore, Wang Sheng was already very satisfied with the speed of cultivation that was many times faster than in the capital city. He would not be greedy for anything else. Now, Wang Sheng was interested in the 9 legendary peak experts from Ashur and Gan families. After living in the innermost circle of the core of the land of Thousand Despair for a whole year, how far would their cultivation increase? How badly would their bodies be damaged? Of course, this had nothing to do with Wang Sheng for the time being. The two of them had already started to slowly rush out according to their plan. However, because they had already circled around the entire ice and snow basin a few times before coming here, Wang Sheng and old Taoist Ling Su did not continue to circle around on their way back. Instead, they walked in a straight line. Every 1 or 2 kilometers, they would stop to set up camp and then continue to cultivate. In the soul space, the black fog was now getting thicker and thicker. Even Abasya found it difficult to breathe in and out. However, the color of its body was changing faster and faster as it breathed in and out, which made Wang Sheng very happy. On the way back, they basically did not meet any pathfinders. Perhaps the news from the outside had spread to the land of Thousand Despair. Everyone knew that Wang Sheng had entered the core of the land of Thousand Despair, so they did not send anyone to provoke bad luck. Everyone knew that Wang Sheng must have a unique skill to save his life in the land of Thousand Despair. It was better to wait for Wang Sheng's map with peace of mind. They only walked 1 or 2 kilometers a day, so the two of them did not have to travel so hard. Wang Sheng also increased the number of times he cultivated daily to 6 times a day. Even so, there was still a lot of free time. Both of them were full of energy, so they naturally had a lot more time to communicate. Are there any techniques that can enhance spiritual energy attacks? Wang Sheng chatted with the old Taoist Ling Su during the intervals between his cultivation. It could also be considered as preparation for choosing his own offensive technique in the future. Wang Sheng had basically seen all the cultivation methods of the Tao sect. To be honest, there were a lot of cultivation methods that cultivated one's body and mind. There were also a lot of cultivation methods that nourished one's qi. There were also a lot of cultivation methods that enhanced one's spiritual power. However, there were not many that were really strong in attack. The Taiji fist was already considered a very powerful offensive fist technique. The Buddhist incantation of 9 secret words was also included. There was no other offensive fist technique that was more powerful than these. Wang Sheng was not like the old Taoist Ling Su. Old Taoist Ling Su's cultivation was too strong. He was so strong that he could completely ignore any cultivation method or technique. A casual wave of his hand would be many times stronger than an attack launched by others using cultivation methods or techniques. To this day, Wang Sheng still remembered the horrifying scene when the old Taoist Ling Su used the Taiji fist for the first time. With one punch, he had pasted a 6-stage expert to the wall. In order to exert a strong offensive power, Wang Sheng needed a strong offensive technique. The ones that he had exchanged with the big families were actually not particularly advanced. When it came to the core inheritance of the family, very few people would take out the real good stuff. Those that could be taken out were the cultivation methods of individual cultivators. There was no need to worry about the core inheritance of the family being leaked. Old Taoist Ling Su was very knowledgeable. He should have seen a lot of powerful people. It was not a bad idea to ask him. Your current spiritual energy cultivation can be considered to have just been supplemented. It's not yet the time to be tyrannical. Old Taoist Ling Su also felt that Wang Sheng should have a spiritual energy attack technique. He enthusiastically pointed out, "Your character is that you'd rather break than bend. Most of the time, you seem to be easy to talk to and willing to compromise. However, those don't touch on the things that you adhere to in your heart. With your character, you're more suitable for the kind of one-hit kill technique, not something like the Taiji fist." Old Taoist Ling Su understood Wang Sheng much better than the average person. His words, especially his analysis of Wang Sheng's character, hit the nail on the head. Just as Old Taoist said, the reason why Wang Sheng seemed to be open to discussion was because those things didn't touch on the things that Wang Sheng adhered to in his heart, such as the girl in his dreams. If someone really dared to have such ideas in front of Wang Sheng would definitely not mind letting them know what a top sniper was. A one-hit kill technique was also in line with Wang Sheng's characteristics. Wang Sheng was originally an ace sniper on Earth, and he was particular about one-hit kills. Having such a technique was indeed in line with Wang Sheng's character. "What kind of techniques are there?" Wang Sheng asked humbly. "Where can I get them?" "There are many techniques, but they all have owners." Old Taoist Ling Su shook his head. "Almost all the big families control more than 99% of them. Don't have any ideas about these techniques, or you'll never have peace in the future." Imagine how the Laojun Temple will deal with the 9 words Buddhist incantation if it's learned by an outsider. If the family's core inherited technique was learned by an outsider, it would shake the foundation of the family. Even if it was for the family's reputation and glory and the possible issue of life and death, a large number of experts would be mobilized. No matter the price, they would kill the guy who learned the family's core inheritance and recover the technique. Wang Sheng nodded, indicating that he knew the pros and cons. Then he asked, "Where are the rest? Where can I find them?" "Carefree City, Godly Might Prison." Old Taoist Ling Su replied without hesitation. Only assassins would be willing to contribute techniques of this level when it's time to save their lives. However, only those who are at least red card assassins in Carefree City are qualified to choose techniques from the arsenal. Wang Sheng flipped his hand, and a bright red card appeared in his hand. It was the red card assassin that Sister Rosa had brought to Wang Sheng from Carefree City. Seeing this card, old Taoist Ling Su laughed. "That's right. You've killed so many people, so you should be at the level of a red card assassin. If you have the chance, you can go to Carefree City to take a look. However, you can only choose one technique at a time in the arsenal, and you can only read it in the arsenal. You're not allowed to bring it out. You have a good memory, so go in and memorize it yourself." "Where's the arsenal? How do I get in?" Wang Sheng asked. Old Taoist Ling Su was a red card assassin who used several different identities, so he definitely knew more about the rules than Wang Sheng. He could just ask directly. The arsenal is a secret, and it's protected by a powerful formation. It's impossible to break in by force. Old Taoist Ling Su replied with a smile. "But it's not a problem for you. 1,000,000 gold coins, and you can go in for a day. Just look for the oldest old man in Carefree City's Hall of Assassins. Or just look for the city lord's butler. He can arrange it." "All right." Wang Sheng nodded to show that he remembered. 1,000,000 gold coins might be difficult for others, but it was not a problem for Wang Sheng. "This time, I'll go around Carefree City and see if there's anything suitable." Chapter 806. Wang Sheng of the Carefree City could still think of a way, but Wang Sheng of the Godly Might Prison could not think of any way at all. He had even killed the legendary assassin of the Godly Might Prison, Bloodblade, and embarrassed the legendary assassin, the world-honored one. It would be extremely difficult to find the techniques of the Godly Might Prison. Other than the Carefree City? Where else could it be? Wang Sheng asked again. It was impossible for all the top-notch techniques to be monopolized by a large clan and the Godly Might Prison in the Carefree City, right? "That's true." Old Taoist Ling Su smiled and said, "Go back and ask that mayor of yours if she's seen it at the top-notch auctions of those large chain stores. Top-notch techniques will appear at auctions." Wang Sheng felt that it was a little ridiculous and could not help but ask. Some techniques are claimed to be very powerful. Old Taoist Ling Su smiled and replied, "It's just that the conditions for cultivation are extremely harsh. Ordinary people can't cultivate it all, and even some extremely talented cultivation geniuses can't cultivate it. However, some techniques have indeed been successfully cultivated, and they're really very powerful." "I understand." Wang Sheng really understood this time. Such techniques are very unorthodox, but they're extremely powerful. The conditions for cultivation are harsh, so most people don't think much of them. Even the major sects and clans can't possibly pass down these techniques that almost no one can cultivate, so they're passed down. "That's right." Old Taoist Ling Su affirmed Wang Sheng's statement. "So, you can look for resources in this area. Doesn't the Temple of Lao Jun plan to accumulate some powerful techniques?" Wang Sheng asked curiously. "Wouldn't it be too much of a loss if the Temple of Lao Jun doesn't have it if the others have it?" "The Temple of Lao Jun actually has it too." Old Taoist Ling Su said a little embarrassedly. "It's just that it's sealed in the land of heritage and can't be taken out." "You know about it too. Didn't I tell you about the inheritance array last time?" Wang Sheng knew about this. At that time, even the Grand Abbey Dean and Old Taoist Ling Su were quite tempted. However, it was said that the matter was left unsettled due to endless internal disputes within the Taoist sect. It was a pity. If the Tao sect could take it out, they wouldn't have to go around looking for ways. After not talking about cultivation methods, most of the conversation between the two was focused on cultivation. In particular, old Taoist Ling Su's experience in cultivating the Taoist scripture for over 100 years was imparted to Wang Sheng almost selflessly during this period of time. This allowed Wang Sheng to have a whole new understanding of the Taoist scripture. 32 of the battle consciousness minion had been split into 32 to re-optimize the Taoist canon of meditation scripture. This was completely based on old Taoist Ling Su's experience. No matter how powerful the battle consciousness minion was, under a hasty calculation, it could not compare to old Taoist Ling Su's experience in cultivating a cultivation method for over 100 years. In particular, old Taoist Ling Su was a super genius who finished cultivating the Taoist canon of meditation scripture within 100 breaths. His experience was simply priceless. When the two arrived at the edge of the ice and snow basin again, it was already a month later. From the time they entered the ice and snow basin to the moment they returned to the edge, it was exactly 3 months. During this period, Wang Sheng spent a lot of time cultivating every day. He only stopped when he felt that his cultivation had reached its limit and that continuing to cultivate would harm his body's source. In 3 months, the change in Wang Sheng's cultivation was very obvious. The Taoist canon of meditation scripture, which could complete a weekday cycle every 2.5 minutes, was reduced to 2 minutes. A complete 9-weekday of cultivation would only take 18 minutes, which saved 1/5 of the time. The pool in the soul origin space was filled with black mist, and the situation in the pool could no longer be seen clearly. The black mist was getting thicker and thicker. What surprised Wang Sheng even more was that the black viper was no longer swallowing through its nose and mouth. Its colorful tail would occasionally stretch into the pool and stir it a few times, as if it had come to life. This was definitely a sign that his soul origin space had improved. He just did not know if Wang Sheng would still have such a terrifying cultivation speed after leaving the core of the land of 1,000 devastations. It was likely that Wang Sheng's absorption of spiritual qi would decrease a lot for a period of time. Perhaps after the battle consciousness minion had re-optimized the Taoist canon of meditation scripture and figured out the method of combining multiple acupoints, there would be further improvement. Most people would not be willing to leave the core of the land of 1,000 devastations to cultivate. Unfortunately, Wang Sheng and old Taoist Ling Su were well aware of the big problems in cultivating there. They would never make such a low-level mistake. Do you feel anything wrong? Old Taoist Ling Su was more concerned about Wang Sheng's body. His cultivation was high, so he did not care, but he was afraid that something would happen to Wang Sheng. I don't feel anything. Wang Sheng carefully examined himself and found that there was indeed no discomfort. At this time, the two had already left the core of the land of 1,000 devastations and reached the periphery. The concentration of spiritual qi had suddenly dropped by 10 times, right at the obvious dividing line. This sudden change made even old Taoist Ling Su nervous about Wang Sheng. To be on the safe side, Wang Sheng and old Taoist Ling Su walked along the dividing line and easily rushed to the Imperial Treasury's camp. The concentration of spiritual qi there was similar to here. After staying for 4 or 5 days to adapt and then slowly walking out, it should not be a big problem. In fact, old Taoist Ling Su was a little too concerned about Wang Sheng. In the past, Wang Sheng had never had any problems in this area. He claimed that his body was damaged, but in fact, there was no problem at all. Anyway, old Taoist had to go back to the Laojun Temple in the capital, so he simply went with Wang Sheng. On the way, he could go to Carefree City to see if there was a suitable cultivation method for Wang Sheng. Wang Sheng and old Taoist Ling Su rushed to the Imperial Treasury's camp, and the camp shopkeeper quickly sent the news to Carefree City through a flying demon beast. Then, all the people who paid attention to Wang Sheng soon got the news. Everyone was curious about how many maps Wang Sheng had drawn in the land of 1,000 devastations for 3 months. In the camp, Wang Sheng and the old Taoist received the grandest hospitality. After resting for 4 or 5 days, Wang Sheng and the old Taoist accompanied a supply team from the Imperial Treasury and slowly returned to Carefree City. At a glance, it was obvious that this team was arranged by the camp's shopkeeper. How was this a supply team? It was clearly to protect them along the way. Wang Sheng did not need protection in the land of thousand devastations, but the camp's shopkeeper insisted that it was a matter of attitude. Everyone who came out of the core of the land of thousand devastations would have a period of great damage to their vitality. Wang Sheng had been in there for so long, and he also announced that he needed to recuperate for a period of time. How could he not need protection when his body was damaged and weak? If something really went wrong, even if the shopkeeper had 10 heads, it would not be enough for LV10 to chop off. The team walked very slowly, and it took a full 10 days to reach Carefree City. Along the way, Wang Sheng had no problems, and old Taoist Ling Su was completely relieved. However, when they arrived at Carefree City, Wang Sheng suddenly found that he had to face another problem. Aki had always been Wang Sheng's woman, and she had been waiting for Wang Sheng in front of Wang Sheng's mansion with a smile. Chapter 807. Wang Sheng had no feelings for Aki at all. In fact, the relationship between the two of them was very complicated. Before Aki came to him, she was still a killer who wanted to kill Wang Sheng. She was just a gift from the Xia family to appease Wang Sheng. At that time, Aki's fate was already decided. Either she would be killed by Wang Sheng to vent his anger, or she would be raped by Wang Sheng. In short, Aki was just an object. It was just like the 600 beauties that Fengguo from the Tang Kingdom and the Xia Kingdom gave to Wang Sheng. It was up to Wang Sheng to open the package and use the gift. It was obvious that Wang Sheng did not dare to have any thoughts about Aki. At that time, his heart softened and he let Aki stay. As a result, it was hard to deal with Aki now. Kill her? It was pointless. At least, Wang Sheng knew that before he fell out with the Xia family, Aki would not dare to touch him. Except her, Wang Sheng was a little unwilling. It was still the same reason. Wang Sheng was a man of principle. It would be tasteless to sleep with a woman without feelings. Song Yin pushed Wang Sheng back then, so she had been friends with Wang Sheng for a long time. Obviously, Aki did not. Wang Sheng could be worse than a beast when there were more than 600 beauties around him and 2 of them warming his bed. He could also be worse than a beast when Aki was lying in his bed. Looking at Aki, who was smiling sweetly like a little wife waiting for her husband to come home, Wang Sheng sighed in his heart. Forget it. Since he was here, he would take things as they came. This was Wang Sheng's home. He could not let Wang Sheng be afraid to go home just because Aki was there. Wouldn't that be too embarrassing? Old Taoist Ling Su also stayed in Wang Sheng's house because Wang Sheng looked a little weak and pale. He did not look healthy at first glance. However, everyone knew that Wang Sheng had entered the core area of the land of thousand despair. They all knew that this would happen, so no one suspected anything. Aki was also secretly happy. Wang Sheng was weak, which meant that she did not have to worry about Wang Sheng forcing her to do bad things. She welcomed Wang Sheng into the house happily. She behaved as if she was the mistress of Wang Sheng's house in Carefree City. She naturally took the initiative to help Wang Sheng and old Taoist Ling Su settle down. The chef had already been instructed to make medicinal cuisine to nourish the body. It was obviously for Wang Sheng to nourish his body. Wang Sheng arrived in the afternoon. He rested for more than 2 hours before the housekeeper of Carefree City came to visit with a smile on his face. This is a 1,000-year-old mountain ginseng specially gifted by the Lord of Carefree City. It is for Lord Duke to nourish his body. As soon as he entered, the housekeeper handed a long wooden box to Aki. However, his words were directed at Wang Sheng. It was obvious that this was a gift for Wang Sheng. Please thank the Lord of Carefree City on my behalf. Wang Sheng politely accepted the box. Aki was very perceptive. She knew that the Lord of Carefree City definitely had something to say to Wang Sheng. After instructing the maids to serve tea, she tactfully left. At the same time, she also brought the maids with her, leaving only Wang Sheng and the housekeeper. Congratulations on your promotion, Lord Duke. The old housekeeper and Wang Sheng were old friends. He came up to congratulate him. It is all thanks to you, elder brother. Wang Sheng's attitude remained the same as before. He stood up to welcome the old housekeeper personally. One had to know that Wang Sheng was Duke Changsheng. His title was even higher than that of the Carefree City Lord, let alone the housekeeper of the Carefree City. However, Wang Sheng did not put on any airs. "I knew you were a good person." Hearing that Wang Sheng still addressed him as elder brother, the housekeeper felt very comfortable. The smile on his face was incomparably bright. After exchanging a few pleasantries, the housekeeper purposely showed concern for Wang Sheng's health. Everyone knew that a trip to the Carefree City would cost a lot of energy. Therefore, the housekeeper's concern for Wang Sheng was sincere. After the two chatted for a long time, the housekeeper finally got down to business. "Did you gain a lot from this trip?" The housekeeper and Wang Sheng had been friends for many years. Moreover, Wang Sheng's attitude did not change even after his identity had changed. Therefore, the housekeeper did not care too much about the conversation. These questions had to be asked eventually. Why not ask them when everyone was in a good mood? "Not bad." Wang Sheng gave an ambiguous answer. Just when the housekeeper was a little disappointed, Wang Sheng spoke again. "Elder brother, do me a favor. I need to borrow a group of people from the Lord of Carefree City." "Who?" the housekeeper asked without hesitation. As long as it was not too much, he would agree immediately. There was no need to seek the Lord of Carefree City's opinion. "Reliable people must be able to keep their mouths shut," Wang Sheng replied. "I want both Shadow and Glacial Plum. In addition, I want a dozen people who know how to draw. I only drew one map. If you want to sell it, one won't be enough. I have to make a few more." "All right, tell the Lord of Carefree City that I will give them the map as payment for their hard work." "How about it?" "What's wrong with that?" Upon hearing this, the housekeeper slapped his thigh in excitement. If the Lord of Carefree City was not satisfied with such a good thing, then the Lord of Carefree City was too greedy. The housekeeper immediately gave an answer. "No problem. I will report to the Lord of Carefree City. They will come over tomorrow morning." "All right, I have to say this first." Wang Sheng liked to say the ugly words first. "During the time between the completion of the map and the sale of the map, these people will either stay with me or the Lord of Carefree City. They're not allowed to leave. After the map is sold, they could do whatever they want." Even if Wang Sheng did not say anything, the housekeeper knew what he meant. It was a matter of confidentiality. To be honest, Wang Sheng could easily find a large group of people to do this. Why did he have to find a Lord of Carefree City? This was his attitude. As long as everyone was happy working together, it was fine. No problem. This was the right thing to do. There was nothing else to say. The housekeeper once again nodded his head. He patted his chest and promised Wang Sheng that there would be no problems. "Then we won't trouble two people for the same thing." Wang Sheng said to the housekeeper, "Let's sell it as well. I want 1,000,000 gold coins. I don't care how much you sell it for. How about that?" At this point, the housekeeper could only give Wang Sheng a thumbs up. What else could he say? Everyone earned money and share benefits. This was the biggest reason why everyone was happy working together. "All right, I got the red card for assassins." Wang Sheng said to the housekeeper, "I heard that the red card assassins have a benefit. They can choose a cultivation technique from the Carefree City's armory. Elder brother, please help me arrange it. To be honest, I still don't have a decent attack cultivation method. It's really embarrassing for me. I won't make things difficult for you, big bro." Chapter 808. Was it difficult? How is that possible? These are the rules of Carefree City. By following the rules, Wang Sheng was already a red card assassin. Moreover, the gold coins would be counted as gold coins. How could this be considered difficult? If he really did this, then Elder Brother Butler would not be able to live anymore. Wang Sheng had given the city lord's residence such a huge benefit. All he wanted was some martial arts techniques. It would not be right to follow the rules. "Leave this matter to me, big brother." Elder Brother Butler patted his chest again. "What gold coins? If you continue giving me gold coins, I will be angry with you. If the city lord finds out that I still accept gold coins from you, I will definitely be scolded." Over the years, Wang Sheng and Carefree City had worked together. Who knew how much gold coins Carefree City had earned? Moreover, Wang Sheng had given them things for free several times. Their value had long exceeded a mere 1,000,000 gold coins. It's just that the gatekeeper of the armory, Uncle Lee, is a bit more serious. I've talked to the city lord about it. At most, he can only give you 2 cultivation techniques. I'm really sorry, the housekeeper said sincerely. He looked a bit apologetic and felt a bit embarrassed. Giving you one is already a big favor. I dare not say that. Wang Sheng naturally knew that what elder brother Butler said was true. What a joke. The fact that the worry-free city was able to give him a top-notch cultivation technique was already a heaven-defying treatment. Giving him 2 was purely out of respect for the city lord. After settling this matter, elder brother Butler immediately took his leave and went back to prepare. He patted his chest and promised that he would come over early the next morning to help with the drawing. There was no need for Wang Sheng to worry about confidentiality. The city lord's residence would take care of everything. As for the martial arts technique, elder brother Butler still had to consult the city lord. He told Wang Sheng to wait for his good news. After sending off elder brother Butler, Wang Sheng's residence quietened down. Wang Sheng was also able to talk to old Taoist Ling Su about the armory. Right now, old Taoist Ling Su was still dressed like a red card assassin. It was no longer a secret that Wang Sheng had won the legendary red card killer's protection 3 times in a bet. Almost everyone knew about it, so no one would suspect that old Taoist Ling Su was doing anything wrong by Wang Sheng's side. Uncle Lee? Is the old man still here? Old Taoist Ling Su was a little surprised when he heard Wang Sheng mention the gatekeeper of the armory. He thought that the old guy had died a long time ago. However, compared to old Taoist Ling Su, Wang Sheng was even more surprised. When did old Taoist Ling Su become a red card killer? That was 50 or 60 years ago. At that time, he had entered the armory, and the gatekeeper was Uncle Lee. How old was Uncle Lee now? Even if he was younger than Taoist Ling Su, there was still a limit to how much younger he was. What's Uncle Lee's level of cultivation? Wang Sheng asked curiously. Old Taoist Ling Su rolled his eyes at Wang Sheng and said angrily, "He reached the peak of the legendary realm decades ago. What do you think? What I mean is, does he have the confidence to break through the limit?" Wang Sheng hurriedly added, lest old Taoist Ling Su misunderstand. He's been living on the edge of the land of despair for so many years. Old Taoist Ling Su couldn't say for sure, but he could infer based on some things. He's either at the peak of the legendary realm, the real peak, or he's a step further than that old royal consecrator. You'll know the specifics when you meet him. They hadn't met for decades, so the old Taoist might not know Uncle Lee's true level of cultivation. No matter how curious he was, Wang Sheng's keen senses would be able to pick up some clues when they met another day. When he went to bed at night, Wang Sheng had to face the situation of being in the same bed as Aki in the same room. The first 2 maids had already treated Aki as their young madam. By the time Wang Sheng entered the bedroom, Aki had already washed up and was lying on the bed naked. I'm sorry. Wang Sheng and Aki had already seen each other naked once. Wang Sheng was thick-skinned, so he said with some embarrassment, "Sorry, I'm going to be worse than a beast this time." Aki's face was as red as a red cloth. She didn't dare to come out of the quilt. Although Wang Sheng had never forced her to do anything, she had just been stripped naked by the 2 maids. She couldn't refuse, for fear that others would find out that Wang Sheng didn't do anything to her. That would be a big trouble. Therefore, even though she was an assassin, Aki could only be stripped naked and thrown onto Wang Sheng's bed by 2 girls whose cultivation was lower than hers. Wang Sheng didn't stand on ceremony. It wasn't the first time anyway. He took off his coat and went to bed in his underwear. He pulled the quilt from Aki and covered her with it. Naturally, he would have to come into contact with Aki's body. His skin was smooth, and his body temperature was so hot that Wang Sheng could not help but feel his heart skip a beat. Unfortunately, thinking of Aki's identity as an assassin, and thinking that he had killed several of Aki's companions, Wang Sheng didn't dare to touch Aki easily. It was okay to hold her in the quilt and feel her smooth and tender skin. If he really did it, maybe he would die on Aki's bed in the future. Aki's body was hot and stiff until she found that Wang Sheng was the same as before. Except holding her to sleep, there was no other movement, so she slowly softened. He did not dare to move, fearing that he would agitate Wang Sheng. Just like that, he slowly fell into a deep sleep amidst his fear. Early in the morning, Wang Sheng still maintained a good work and rest habit. He got up early. Of course, Aki also got up, but when she faced Wang Sheng, she always blushed and didn't dare to look at him directly. When old Taoist Ling Su had breakfast with Wang Sheng and Aki, his patient smile and mysterious gaze made Wang Sheng want to kick him. After breakfast, the butler came to the door with some people. Ice Li and the old shadow eunuch, whom Wang Sheng had mentioned, were there. In addition, there were 10 other people. According to the butler, they were all proficient in drawing maps. The 10 of them could guarantee that they could copy Wang Sheng's map exactly. The Castellan had already agreed to the matter of the arsenal. He was only waiting for Wang Sheng to finish drawing, and then he would take him to the arsenal to choose. Relatively speaking, the matter of the map was more important. If you want people to draw the map, why did you call us over? Ice Li and the shadow eunuch seemed a little out of place among the 10 people who drew the map. The 2 of them didn't stand on ceremony, and the old shadow eunuch asked directly. "The 2 of you are mainly here to drink with me," said Wang Sheng with a smile. These 2 were old friends that he had met when he first came to Carefree City. Especially the old shadow eunuch. Wang Sheng still wanted to ask him some questions, but there were too many people here, so he definitely couldn't ask him here. Of course, he still needed a reasonable reason. "Shadow, don't you have a way to make the voices here not be heard by people outside? I need this ability of yours." Upon hearing Wang Sheng's reason, everyone, including the butler, nodded at once. It was better to arrange it this way. It was enough to keep it secret. Chapter 809. Including Aki, the butler's elder brother, the shadow, Ice Li, and the 10 drawing experts brought by the butler had all seen the map drawn by Wang Sheng, as well as the distribution map of the formations. It was a very obvious ring-shaped circle covering an area of more than 40 miles outside the core of the Land of Thousand Despair. It could be said that there were at least 300 to 400 small circles drawn on it. Everyone understood that every small circle represented the coverage of an unknown array formation. From the perspective of the map, no matter which direction one entered, it was impossible to find a straight path to the core area of the Land of Thousand Despair. If one did not want to be disturbed or attacked by those formations, there was no other way but to go in circles. The map was more detailed than anyone could imagine. Except for old Taoist Ling Su, who had seen how Wang Sheng had drawn it, no one else could imagine how such a detailed map was drawn. There was no other way. There were too many formations, and I could only draw so many in 3 months. Wang Sheng said to the crowd with a slightly apologetic tone. In the end, my body and cultivation couldn't take it anymore, so I had to come back. Even so, the crowd was already surprised enough. To be honest, apart from the butler and the drawing experts, Aki, the shadow, and Ice Li had all seen the edge of the core area of the Land of Thousand Despair through the campsite of the Imperial Treasury as a springboard. Just by looking down from the jungle on the edge of the ice and snow basin, they already knew how terrifying it was inside. Wang Sheng and old Taoist Ling Su had stayed inside for a full 3 months, relying entirely on Wang Sheng's keen senses to avoid the monsters. At the same time, he had to draw such a large-scale map. It was simply a miracle. As for what was going on inside, no one paid attention to it for the time being. Wang Sheng was a little apologetic, but what was there to be apologetic about? Which of the big families hadn't sent people inside? Which one of them could draw even a small part of a similar map? Moreover, wasn't this good? The map of the outer circle of the core area of the Land of Thousand Despair could be sold once, and the inner circle could be sold again. A complete map could be sold twice. How good was that? After exclaiming in surprise, the butler clapped his hands and commanded the crowd to begin. After assigning the tasks, the few of them went to Wang Sheng's garden to copy the map Wang Sheng had drawn and the distribution of the array formations. The shadow had already activated his unique cultivation method to block out all sounds in this place. As for Han Bingley, of course, he wasn't just drinking without a mission. He sat alone on a high roof, vigilantly watching and listening to his surroundings to ensure that no one was spying on him. This was only Wang Sheng's courtyard. Outside Wang Sheng's residence, when the steward came over in the morning, he had already arranged for at least 20 over 8th degree realm guards to stand guard. The other two clans had already received instructions to cooperate and participate in the defense. Other than that, there were at least 4 9th-stage realm red card killers guarding in the dark. Once there was any sign of trouble, they would immediately take action without any mercy. After arranging everything, the butler left. The people here would stay at Wang Sheng's place for at least 5 days. Everyone would have to make at least 5 copies of the map before they could leave. That morning, the worry-free city sent out the news. The Duke of Everlasting Victory, Wang Sheng, had safely returned to the worry-free city. The map was being copied by the people of the worry-free city and would be sold in 5 days. The various feudal vassals had been waiting impatiently for this map, and finally, the news was confirmed. All of them began to happily make preparations. Of course, the worry-free city did not forget to release the news to the various parties. It was just a map of the outer perimeter of the core area of the grounds of Thousand Despair, so that the other parties would not feel cheated. However, although it was only a map of the outer perimeter, the worry-free city specially reminded them that the details of the map were beyond everyone's imagination. Wang Sheng's military mapping method was not something the knowledge system of this world could compare to. Even if Wang Sheng had omitted many things, it was enough to make the people of this world dumbfounded. Just to explore the way, the number of experts who had died in the core area of the grounds of Thousand Despair was no less than 10. These were not ordinary experts. They were at least in the early stage of the legendary realm. Losing any one of them was enough to make everyone's heart ache. It was worth it to spend some gold coins to buy an unimaginably detailed map. Everyone was waiting silently. Those who needed to raise funds did so, while those who needed to send experts did so. They all knew that only one map would be given to each family. It would be a huge joke if the map was snatched away by someone else. Aki asked the maids to entertain these experts attentively. Wang Sheng pretended to be meditating while drinking with the shadow and Isley. Of course, Isley was high up on the roof, so he could only hold his wine glass from afar and toast with them. Not bad. This group of experts was really good at drawing. Wang Sheng's map was very complicated, but these guys still had a way to make an average of 1 copy a day. The specific method was their secret, and Wang Sheng did not want to investigate it. These people were going to stay in Wang Sheng's mansion for the next few days, which made Aki feel more at ease. Wang Sheng certainly would not do anything to her when there were so many people in the house. In fact, this was indeed the case. Other than hugging her half-naked body to sleep every day, Wang Sheng did nothing else. After a few days, even Achi himself felt a little strange. Why did he fall in love with the feeling of being able to sleep peacefully in Wang Sheng's arms? 3 days later, everyone was busy with their own affairs. Wang Sheng and the Shadow continued to chat and laugh wittily at the wine table in the house. While drinking, they talked about some interesting things in the land of Thousand Despair. No one felt anything unusual. The Shadow, who was talking and laughing, suddenly saw Wang Sheng's finger dipped in wine and wrote a few words on the wine table. Even if it was written upside down, the Shadow could instantly recognize it. Is Mayer a princess? Just these words. After Wang Sheng finished writing, he looked up at the Shadow. After confirming that the Shadow had seen it, he reached out and wiped the wine on the table, leaving only a wine stain and no other writing. Come, let's drink. Wang Sheng picked up his wine glass, clinked it with the Shadow's, and drank a cup. His eyes were fixed on the Shadow's movements. The Shadow suddenly shook his head. Was this to say no? Wang Sheng felt relieved. He was about to continue, but he saw the Shadow's movements. The old eunuch also dipped his finger in wine and wrote on the table. Wang Sheng immediately understood that he had misunderstood. Shaking his head clearly meant that he did not know, not that he denied it. The old eunuch talked about a strange insect he encountered in the land of Thousand Despair and wrote on the wine table with his finger, secret mark, black mole, root of leg. After writing these 6 words, the shadow old eunuch casually erased all the words. The two continued to drink as if they had never talked about this topic. Chapter 8:10. Wang Sheng's face was calm, but his heart was in turmoil. Even the old shadow eunuch didn't know about Mei Er's identity. There must be many twists and turns in this. No matter what, the princess was definitely not dead. It was just that he didn't know where she was. It was easy to understand that the real princess had a birthmark on her body and a mole at the base of her leg. Unfortunately, Wang Sheng hadn't had the chance to see that part of Mei Er's body. It wasn't that Mei Er wasn't willing, but Wang Sheng insisted on his principles. It was easy to verify it. He just had to make a trip back. He didn't have to worry about this problem for the time being. He believed that Mei Er wasn't guarded against Wang Sheng to this extent. Even if it was a mole on her private part, Mei Er wouldn't refuse if Wang Sheng wanted to see it. This was also the reason why he had called the old shadow eunuch over. Now that he knew the answer, or more accurately, the method to verify it, Wang Sheng felt like a weight had been lifted off his chest. If Mei Er was really a princess, then Wang Sheng would have to consider his future cooperation with the royal family. Having such a deep relationship with the imperial family would always be a troublesome matter. After returning to Carefree City, Wang Sheng could feel that the speed of his cultivation had slowed down. It was better than when he was in the capital city, but it was still limited. A complete cultivation session was like a cloud of gray fog. It couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as when he was in the core of the land of Thousand Despair. However, cultivating in Carefree City also made Wang Sheng realize that he could sense the total amount of spiritual energy stored in his acupoints. Previously, spiritual energy cultivation wasn't his main method of leveling up. Wang Sheng didn't know how much spiritual energy could be stored as acupoints, but they were always full. Now, Wang Sheng could clearly sense that up until now, all of his acupoints had a stream of condensed spiritual energy circulating, but it still couldn't fill up the acupoints. No matter how he looked at it, it felt empty. However, after each complete cultivation, Wang Sheng could sense that the spiritual energy in his acupuncture points would increase a little. Perhaps this was the true path of spiritual energy cultivation. The feeling of filling the acupuncture points with spiritual energy was very refreshing. It was like a starving person suddenly eating a mouthful of delicious chocolate. It was very comfortable. To be able to cultivate to such a comfortable level, Wang Sheng understood that this basically meant that he was on the right path. If the more one cultivated, the more bitter it became, that would be the evil path. 5 days passed very quickly. 10 people and 50 maps were all completed by the evening of the 5th day. Then, this group of people, including Shadow and Isley, all stayed in a small courtyard next to the city lord's mansion, waiting for the sale of the map to be completed. Actually, it was only for a day. Anyone could endure it. Carefree City's timing was very accurate. On the 2nd day, the map sale started on time. 1,500,000 gold coins for one map, and there was no cheating. Don't think it was expensive, and there was no discount. It couldn't be sold anywhere else. All the major vassal states had already prepared gold coins and experts. Without even bargaining, they hurriedly bought one map and brought it back to the stronghold of Carefree City before carefully looking at it. Wang Sheng's credibility from doing business in the past played a good role at this time. No one suspected that Wang Sheng would tamper with it. Moreover, each family had their own means to verify it. Within a day, at least hundreds of messenger birds took off. No one knew which messenger bird would be carrying the real map back to each family. At night, when Wang Sheng was sleeping soundly with Aki in his arms, all the major vassal states had already received the map brought over by messenger birds from Carefree City. From the king to several important ministers, everyone surrounded this big map, carefully observing and analyzing it. A few of the vassal states also had their own ancestral map of the distribution of spell formations, but it was very incomplete. Now, they were holding onto Wang Sheng's map of the periphery of the core of the grounds of Thousand Despair and comparing it with the secret maps passed down by their ancestors in great detail. In truth, when Wang Sheng received the map of the distribution of spell formations from Mei he was also very puzzled. This was because the map of this world had no concept of scale at all. Horizontal and vertical even used different scales, which caused a lot of trouble for map recognition. In fact, the Peerless Treasure map was the same. They were all examples of scale errors. Fortunately, Wang Sheng had a strong memory and was able to remember all the distribution of the spell formations. Then, he analyzed it in his mind and compared it with the actual map. Only then could he have the correct reference. The various vassal states held onto Wang Sheng's standard scale map and compared it with the one passed down by their ancestors. There were some places that seemed right, but were actually wrong. Everyone racked their brains to copy the spell formations marked on the ancestral map onto Wang Sheng's map bit by bit. It took them an entire night to come up with a preliminary conclusion. The ancestral map of each great family was only a part of Wang Sheng's map. There was a part of the map that went deeper than Wang Sheng's map, but when it reached the inner circle of the grounds of Thousand Despair, there was only a corner left. It was a very neat corner, as if it had been cut open with a knife. There were a few half-circles that were left after the cut was made. Now, everyone had a good idea. There was a 90% chance that Wang Sheng's map was correct, because a part of it matched the ancestral map of each family. As for their own secret map, it could be the territory that was divided after the attack on the Lin family. The Dai family boundary stone that Wang Sheng had found in the core area of the grounds of Thousand Despair must have marked the boundaries between the families. In this way, all of their guesses were correct. The core area of the grounds of Thousand Despair seemed to have lifted a veil of mystery in front of the various vassal states. Once everyone was ready, they would enter and explore. Among them, the ones who were the happiest were the Sure family and Gon family. They realized that Wang Sheng didn't go to the inner circle of the lands of Thousand Despair at all. This meant that the discovery of the Peerless Treasure could be delayed. However, the two families were also very depressed. It had been a year, but the 9 people inside showed no signs of coming out. They knew that they were still alive, but they did not know how they were doing. It was really worrying. With this map, everyone's thoughts began to move again. It would be much easier to send people in. They did not have to explore and open up a path. They only had to verify the map, which saved them a lot of trouble. Once the various camps in the grounds of Thousand Despair were completed and sufficient experts were nurtured, they would be able to charge into the core area and explore the mysterious sacred land of cultivation. Just as everyone was looking forward to when Wang Sheng would enter the grounds of Thousand Despair once more to explore the inner circle of the core area and draw a map to sell to everyone. Wang Sheng had already left the arsenal and was on his way back to the capital. Along the way, Wang Sheng had been pondering over the Uncle Li and the 2 new offensive techniques that he had seen in the arsenal. Chapter 811. After all, the worry-free city was located at the edge of the grounds of Thousand Despair. It wasn't a good place to cultivate. The most suitable place to cultivate was the capital city. Furthermore, Wang Sheng wanted to know if Mei was the princess that the emperor had separated from. He had to verify it when he returned. The old butler was very thorough in his work. While he was arranging for the map to be sold, he personally came to visit Wang Sheng and led him to the armory of the worry-free city. Wang Sheng had always thought that the armory of the worry-free city would be in the Castellan Manor. Even if it wasn't in the Castellan Manor, it should be in the vicinity. However, Wang Sheng didn't expect that the direction the old butler was leading him to was not the Castellan Manor. "Old brother, where are we going?" Wang Sheng couldn't help but ask as he watched the old butler lead the way out of the city. "The armory," the old butler replied with a chuckle. He then looked at Wang Sheng and asked with a mysterious smile, "Old brother, you can't be thinking that the armory is in the Castellan Manor, right?" Seeing that Wang Sheng had the same thought as many others, the old butler was very pleased. Everyone thinks that it's in the Castellan Manor, but it's not. False is true, and true is false. Wang Sheng nodded. He didn't want to dwell on this issue. After walking for a short distance, when they were about to reach the city gate of the lands of Thousand Despair, the housekeeper took a turn and entered an ordinary household near the city gate. This was an ordinary courtyard in the inner city. It was even smaller than the courtyard that Wang Sheng had lived in. It was just a simple courtyard. There were two people inside, and they were obviously husband and wife. The husband was chopping firewood in the courtyard, and the wife seemed to be cutting a piece of cloth to make clothes. However, Wang Sheng could tell that the broad axe in the husband's hands was not ordinary. It was definitely not less than 200 caddies. As for the scissors in the wife's hands, it was frighteningly nimble. This couple was obviously not a simple couple. Anyone who could own a courtyard in the inner city of the worry-free city was not an ordinary person. Wang Sheng had no doubt about this. If not for the housekeeper bringing Wang Sheng in, Wang Sheng would never have imagined that this ordinary-looking courtyard was actually the entrance to the famous armory of Worry-Free City. Of course, it could only be the entrance. If someone insisted that this was an armory, Wang Sheng would spit on their face. This was the armory. Where were the books in the armory? Sure enough, when they saw the butler bring Wang Sheng in, the couple looked up and then lowered their heads again as if they didn't see anyone and went on with their business. Pushing open the door, the butler entered the main room of the small courtyard. After entering the door, he waited for Wang Sheng to come in, then hurriedly closed the door. Only then did he take out a white jade medallion and infuse it with spiritual energy. Shua, in front of Wang Sheng and the housekeeper, a door suddenly appeared on the wall that was originally leaning against the city wall. Needless to say, it was a door covered by an illusion array. An extremely complicated-looking key was inserted into the keyhole of the door and turned a few times. In the process, it even stopped to infuse spiritual energy. Wang Sheng believed that whether the angle or timing of the infusion of spiritual energy was wrong, he would probably be attacked by the two offensive arrays on the side. Others might not be able to see it, but Wang Sheng had already noticed the arrays on both sides. There was even one above his head, but the fluctuations of the array were very weak. The housekeeper didn't say or remind him, so Wang Sheng didn't say anything. The door opened, and the housekeeper took the lead to enter. He called for Wang Sheng to enter. Wang Sheng also followed obediently and didn't stand out at all. There are many traps and arrays here. Don't move recklessly. After the door was closed, the housekeeper reminded Wang Sheng, Uncle Li has been through a few castellans and is the most respected elder of the castellans. You can't be rude. Wang Sheng nodded. Which idiot would want to offend Uncle Li after witnessing such a scene? The housekeeper's reminder was probably not to remind him at all, but to flatter Uncle Li inside. This should be within Uncle Li's sensing range. After entering the door, there was a passage with very weak light. They went down in a circle. Wang Sheng obediently followed the housekeeper and walked down the stone steps step by step. There was a flat road every once in a while. After walking for a while, they went up the stairs. After turning in another direction, they went down the circular stairs again. Just this passage alone took about half an hour. Wang Sheng understood that going around in circles made it impossible for people to figure out the specific location of the arsenal. The ancients liked to play with such twists and turns. Even the circular stairs were not very standard. The places where they turned had already turned several times, making it impossible for people to know where they were going. In such a long passage, there were more than 20 arrays that could be triggered at any time. Wang Sheng could sense it, but he didn't have the slightest other thoughts. This was not a place where he could have any ideas. Finally, after walking up and down the stairs, they came to a wide and flat ground. Wang Sheng understood that they should be almost at the end. Hello, Uncle Li. After taking a few steps forward, the housekeeper suddenly stopped in place and saluted and greeted the empty place in front of him that only had a wall. Wang Sheng didn't think it was strange and followed suit. Anyway, at that age, he must be a senior, so saluting was no problem at all. Oh, it's you. A very spirited voice sounded in their ears. Then, the wall in front of them slowly opened, and a shirtless person appeared in front of them. When Wang Sheng raised his head, he saw the shirtless, super expert Uncle Li, who seemed to be practicing martial arts. To be honest, Wang Sheng was shocked. This Uncle Li looked too young, so young that he was almost the same age as Wang Sheng. However, this only looked young. Wang Sheng knew that old Taoist Ling Su would definitely not lie to him. Moreover, the housekeeper also said that this Uncle Li had been through several castellans, so he was probably more than 100 years old. He couldn't be a young man. It was simply a miracle that such an old man had such a look and figure. If Mayer knew about this, she would definitely crazily pursue this beauty preservation method. Uncle Li glanced at the housekeeper slightly. Then his eyes fell on Wang Sheng. Wang Sheng could completely sense the two scrutinizing eyes. Even when facing old Taoist Ling Su, Wang Sheng didn't feel this way. The two eyes seemed to have weight, and Wang Sheng's body spontaneously felt the pressure. It's rare to see such a young red card killer. Uncle Li seemed to be very easy to deal with. He spoke with a smile. When he saw Wang Sheng, he asked, "Tell me, how many people did you kill to become a red card killer?" Chapter 8:12. I can't remember. At least a few hundred people, maybe even more. Wang Sheng was startled, but he still answered honestly. That is to say, you relied on the points of so many people and yourself to become a red card assassin. Uncle Li still had a smile on his face, but it was slightly different from before. There was obviously a trace of disdain in it. If you put it that way, I really can't refute you. Wang Sheng replied, as if he didn't see the expression on Uncle Li's face. Don't you think it's embarrassing? Uncle Li raised his head and looked at Wang Sheng as if he was looking down on him. He asked Wang Sheng, "You didn't rely on your own abilities, but you relied on killing people whose cultivation is lower than yours to accumulate points." The butler was already complaining in his heart. In the past, when he brought people here, such a situation had never occurred. It was obvious that Uncle Li was somewhat dissatisfied with Wang Sheng. He felt that Wang Sheng did not rely on his own abilities, but on his dishonest ways to become a red card assassin. If he had known this would happen, he would have reminded Wang Sheng to be more careful with his words. But on second thought, there was no problem with Wang Sheng's answer. Wang Sheng had indeed killed hundreds or even thousands of people. There was no mistake at all. Was he supposed to tell Wang Sheng to lie and say that he had only killed a few experts? This was troublesome. If Wang Sheng did not answer this question well, Wang Sheng's hopes would be dashed. It was not that Uncle Li did not want to give Wang Sheng a cultivation technique, but he would not give Wang Sheng the best. Rules were rules. Worry-Free City had never told a red card assassin what he had to do. Even Uncle Li had to follow the rules of a red card assassin. However, Uncle Li could tamper with the rules and give you the inferior ones. The butler and Wang Sheng could not complain at all. Embarrassing? Why? Wang Sheng was puzzled. I am still alive, and my enemy is dead. Why should I feel embarrassed? Uncle Li stared at Wang Sheng as if he was trying to see through Wang Sheng's true thoughts. Wang Sheng stood up straight and stared at Uncle Li without flinching, just like when he was in a military camp on Earth. While the butler was complaining incessantly in his heart, he didn't dare to say or move recklessly. The lord in front of him was not an ordinary lord. He was much harder to serve than the city lord. If this old man was unhappy, he could stomp his feet and cause the entire carefree city to tremble. Moreover, Uncle Li's aura had already suppressed him, so he couldn't open his mouth at all. If you put it that way, I really can't refute you. Uncle Li suddenly laughed. He returned Wang Sheng's words to Wang Sheng, word for word. There is indeed no way to refute it, because what Wang Sheng said was the truth. Why should the living victors feel shameful, while the dead losers feel glorious? Wang Sheng was an assassin. Of course, he would kill his enemies as his glory. Even if there were 100 Uncle Li standing here, they wouldn't be able to say that Wang Sheng was wrong. However, he had indeed underestimated Wang Sheng. When he said it was shameful, he was comparing Wang Sheng to other red card assassins, not Wang Sheng to those dead people. The problem was that he didn't make it clear, and Wang Sheng pretended to be ignorant. As a senior, Uncle Li couldn't possibly make things difficult for Wang Sheng, right? Uncle Li was actually angered to the point that he was amused. For many years, no one had dared to be impudent in front of him. Even though the young man in front of him wasn't impudent, his attitude was infuriating. He should be ashamed of himself. but he acted more righteously than those red card assassins. How could Uncle Lee not be angry? However, who was Uncle Lee? To be frank, he was several times older than Wang Sheng's grandfather. He didn't need to be calculative with a junior. If word got out, people would laugh at him. What kind of cultivation technique do you want? Thinking up to this point, Uncle Lee did not say anything else. Once he was done with his business, he would quickly scram. He did not wish to see Wang Sheng before him for even a moment longer. This young man really had guts. Just because he dared to speak like this in front of him, he was barely qualified to be a red card assassin. The rest was business. There was nothing more to say. This junior wants 2 offensive cultivation techniques. Wang Sheng replied honestly, it would be best if it's a powerful cultivation technique that can kill in one hit. Uncle Lee immediately began to think about which cultivation techniques could meet Wang Sheng's requirements. However, he quickly realized that Wang Sheng wanted 2 cultivation techniques, not 1. 2. Uncle Lee's face immediately darkened as he asked. However, he wasn't asking about Wang Sheng, but the butler beside him. Lone Wolf has made a great contribution to Worry-Free City, so the city lord promised to allow Lone Wolf to choose 2 cultivation techniques. The butler could only speak now, so he quickly replied, great contribution? Uncle Lee was obviously disdainful of this. What kind of contribution could be considered a great contribution? Wasn't it all said by the city lord? It could be said that the current city lord was young and had been deceived by this eloquent fellow. Since the city lord said it's 2, then it's 2. Uncle Lee didn't discount the city lord's promise at all. He said it was 2. However, it wouldn't be easy for Wang Sheng to get 2 cultivation techniques so easily. 1 cultivation technique is the benefit of a red card assassin. According to the rules, I will hand it to you. Uncle Lee said slowly, but for the second method, you'll have to rely on yourself. Take whatever cultivation method you can get. Wang Sheng laughed bitterly in his heart. This was really getting shot while lying down. Who knew that this Uncle Lee would care so much about his age and how he became a red card assassin? Facing this old monster's strong pressure, Wang Sheng couldn't refute it. Otherwise, if this old monster turned hostile, he would be in trouble. Forget it, I will take whatever I can get. Wang Sheng also threw caution to the wind. He probably wouldn't be able to get anything good this time. There is a cultivation technique that is very suitable for your requirements. Uncle Lee finally thought of a cultivation technique and said slowly, wait. After saying that, Uncle Lee turned and walked inside. After entering a door, he couldn't be seen anymore. Only then did the butler let out a bitter laugh. He turned to Wang Sheng with a bitter expression. If he knew that this would be the result of bringing Wang Sheng here, he wouldn't have come personally. Who knew what kind of illness Uncle Lee had? To judge a book by its cover. This time, he was probably going to offend Wang Sheng to death. However, he couldn't explain it. When Uncle Lee was standing here just now, the faint aura had already suppressed the butler to the point that he couldn't say anything. He couldn't even open his mouth to explain. Not long after, Uncle Lee came out from the door and threw a scroll to Wang Sheng. This is the cultivation technique you want. You can only read it here for 1 day. As for the second cultivation technique, that will depend on your own ability. The arsenal is at the back. Take whatever cultivation technique you can get. If you can't get it, you can't blame others. Chapter 8:13. This was a huge misunderstanding. Wang Sheng sighed in his heart. He did not know if this Uncle Lee was crazy or if he did not look at the almanac. He could only let nature take its course. How do I get the cultivation technique? Wang Sheng was not a servile person. Since things had already turned out this way, Wang Sheng would not explain himself. He only wanted a cultivation technique. Uncle Lee might not have anything to do with him in the future, so there was no need for him to get angry over such a trivial matter. Follow me. Uncle Lee looked at the calm Wang Sheng and was impressed by this kid's ability to maintain his composure. To be able to remain so calm at a time like this, he was definitely not one of those useless embroidered pillows. Since you are the person who made great contributions to Worry-Free City, then you have the qualifications to see the true armory with your own eyes. Uncle Lee stared at Wang Sheng and coldly snorted, "Follow me." When Uncle Lee turned to look at Wang Sheng realized that Uncle Lee's eyes did not match the youthfulness of his body at all. They were infinitely deep, as if they could see through the world with a single glance, revealing an indescribable sense of vicissitudes. Uncle Lee walked in front, while Wang Sheng and the housekeeper followed behind. The housekeeper also had a look of surprise on his face. It seemed like he had not seen the armory before. After entering the door that Uncle Lee had just entered, the space in front of them suddenly opened up. A huge underground cavern the size of a football field appeared in front of Wang Sheng and the housekeeper. In the huge underground cavern, there were rows of neatly arranged shelves, similar to those in libraries, neatly arranged with countless scrolls. Every scroll contained a cultivation technique of varying levels. At first glance, there were at least tens of thousands of cultivation techniques. It was unknown if these were the legacies of the worry-free city or if they had been plundered from somewhere. However, one thing was for sure. The cultivation techniques that could be placed in the armory were definitely of a high level. Uncle Lee was alone in this huge arsenal, looking at so many cultivation techniques every day. He was definitely an unimaginably terrifying monster. If Wang Sheng could refer to so many cultivation methods, how good would that be? Wang Sheng looked at the huge arsenal, then turned to look at Uncle Lee. He couldn't figure out what Uncle Lee wanted to do. These are all different kinds of cultivation techniques. Uncle Lee felt Wang Sheng's gaze and did not even look at Wang Sheng. He only looked at the large pile of cultivation techniques and said, "However, all of the cultivation techniques are protected by formation. If you want a cultivation technique, go get it yourself." "There's such a good thing?" Wang Sheng could not believe his ears. He looked at Uncle Lee in surprise. The butler turned his head away and closed his eyes. "You call that a good thing?" Even an ordinary legend realm expert might not be able to withstand a single blow from the formation protecting the arsenal. This was a formation that Uncle Lee personally set up. It was not the simple formations outside. It was a super formation that Uncle Lee had specially created for the arsenal after combining his hundreds of years of formation experience. Once it was triggered, even immortals would not be able to save it. How could Wang Sheng say that it was a good thing? Of course. Uncle Lee smiled confidently. As long as you can get it, the cultivation technique is yours. You can look at it for a day. However, it is limited to one type. Where's the strongest cultivation technique? Since it had come to this, Wang Sheng did not need to care about saving face. He directly asked the strongest cultivation technique. The most powerful cultivation technique also has the most powerful protective formation. Uncle Lee had completely lost his patience with Wang Sheng, a young man who didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. He only said coldly, "Once you reach out, given your cultivation, you will die without a doubt. What if I'm lucky enough to survive?" Wang Sheng suddenly asked on a whim. At the same time, it could be considered as a provocative question. "Then you can look at the cultivation technique for a day." Uncle Lee did not fall for Wang Sheng's trick. He directly replied to Wang Sheng. Uncle Lee was over 100 years old. How could he be provoked by Wang Sheng? He was not moved at all. He just looked at Wang Sheng coldly. "You still haven't answered my question. Where's the strongest cultivation technique?" Wang Sheng shook his head. If Uncle Lee did not fall for it, then so be it. No matter what, he had to memorize the strongest cultivation technique and take it away. Uncle Lee slowly raised his arm and stretched out his hand. He flicked his finger and pointed in a direction. He could not even be bothered to say anything to Wang Sheng. For a junior who was at most in the stage 7 realm to be able to say so much was already giving face to the city lord. After sending Wang Sheng off, he would look for the city lord and have a good talk about this matter. This was to prevent the city lord from being deceived by others due to his young age, thinking that doing something would be considered a contribution to Carefree City. Wang Sheng looked in that direction and walked over without hesitation. In this huge underground cave, there was no one else other than Uncle Lee. Wasn't he afraid that something would happen to the manuals in the arsenal? Perhaps it was because the worry-free city was too powerful, or perhaps it was because Uncle Lee was so powerful that he felt that no one would be able to take anything from the armory without being discovered and paying a heavy price. That was probably why he was so arrogant. Uncle Lee looked down on him. Wang Sheng did not mind letting Uncle Lee suffer today. From today onwards, Uncle Lee would open one eye every time he slept and stare at every cultivation technique scroll. He would let Uncle Lee know the consequences of underestimating him. When Wang Sheng walked in that direction, Uncle Lee only stared at him disapprovingly. However, when Wang Sheng walked halfway, Uncle Lee's expression changed. He became unusually solemn. He could clearly see Wang Sheng walking in that direction. However, he could not sense any trace of Wang Sheng's aura. In other words, Wang Sheng had suddenly disappeared from his spiritual energy detection range. How is that possible? Wang Sheng was obviously there. What was more terrifying was that Uncle Lee suddenly realized that he could see Wang Sheng, but he could not sense any trace of Wang Sheng's aura. He could not even hear Wang Sheng's footsteps and heartbeat. If not for the fact that he could see Wang Sheng would have been an invisible person the moment he closed his eyes. In that instant, Uncle Lee realized that he had made a huge mistake. He had treated a top-notch assassin as a scoundrel who was trying to bluff his way through. Just by being invisible in front of him, Uncle Lee could kill any expert. No matter how powerful an expert was, he could not be vigilant of his surroundings at all times, right? This was the first time in his 100 years of guarding the arsenal that he had made a mistake. Now, he had to see how Wang Sheng would deal with the terrifying formation that sealed the manuals. If Wang Sheng had a way to break through the formation, the entire arsenal would be in danger. Chapter 8:14. Wang Sheng did not walk very fast, and as he walked, he kept looking around as if he wanted to see the contents of the scrolls through the shelves on both sides. If that was the case, Uncle Lee would not be surprised. After all, there was still an array or a few arrays between them. Even if Wang Sheng could see it, he could only look at it and had no way of touching it. This was a trick that Uncle Lee used to play with people's hearts. He would randomly place one or a few arrays on each shelf. If someone wanted to enter the arsenal and have any ideas about the cultivation methods, they might fall into his trap. Those who dared to have any ideas about the arsenal were definitely top experts. Perhaps they were experts that Uncle Lee could not discover, or perhaps they were an array expert. After all, people have a habit of thinking. If the other party broke through a formation and obtained a cultivation technique when he wanted to break through another one, he might think that there was only one formation. Caught off guard, he might also fall for it. Under the layers of protection, what could Wang Sheng see? Moreover, these scrolls were all kept rolled up, and the contents written on them were all inside. At most, there would be a name written on the outside of the scroll. So what if Wang Sheng saw it? Unless Wang Sheng had X-ray vision and was able to recognize the overlapping words on the scrolls, there was no point in just looking at it. Indeed, Wang Sheng seemed to have seen a name on the scroll and was a little tempted. He subconsciously stretched out his hand and wanted to touch it. Looking at Wang Sheng's action, Uncle Lee's face revealed a cold smile. If Wang Sheng really touched it, he would not have to worry about anything in the future. Although the cultivation techniques on the shelves along the way were not particularly powerful, the power of the array formation was not necessarily weak. At least to a junior like Wang Sheng, who was at most in the 7th stage realm, the power of the array on the scroll could directly blow Wang Sheng into pieces. Wang Sheng's hand only moved forward a little. When his fingers were about half a foot away from the scroll, he abruptly stopped and stopped moving forward. Uncle Lee was not surprised at all. To be able to rely on such extraordinary concealment methods to become a red card killer, who would be so silly to touch the scroll, which obviously had an array on it? It was normal for Wang Sheng not to touch it. If he really touched it, Uncle Lee would suspect how Wang Sheng, who was so stupid, became a red card killer. The butler's heart was also hanging in midair. He did not expect Uncle Lee to make such a request. This was completely inconsistent with the city lord's promise. If he really did that, even if Wang Shangquan managed to escape unscathed, the reputation of the worry-free city lord would still spread. This was not Wang Sheng's fault. It was because the city lord and Uncle Lee did not communicate well, causing Uncle Lee to misunderstand Wang Sheng. If this mistake were spread, old Brother Butler would be the scapegoat. If it was just a scapegoat, it was all right. As the city lord's butler, helping the city lord to be the scapegoat was an honor. Other people didn't even have the chance to do so. However, the problem was that he was being suppressed by Uncle Lee to the point where he couldn't speak. He could only watch as Wang Sheng risked his life to obtain the second cultivation technique. These two cultivation methods were promised by the city lord. How did it become like this? Old Brother Butler was so anxious that he broke out in cold sweat. But it was useless. In front of Uncle Lee, this overbearing old monster, not to mention old Brother Butler, even if there were a few red card killers, they probably wouldn't be able to say a word. Seeing that Wang Sheng's hand was about to touch the place where it shouldn't be, old Brother Butler's heart was hanging in his throat. If he could shout out now, old Brother Butler would have used his loudest voice to warn Wang Sheng to be careful. Unfortunately, he could only watch and not make a sound. Fortunately, Wang Sheng stopped at the crucial moment, allowing old Brother Butler to breathe a sigh of relief. Wang Sheng was Wang Sheng. After all, he was not a reckless person. But Wang Sheng's next move directly scared old Brother Butler out of his wits. Wang Sheng's hand stopped in the air for a moment. Just when Uncle Lee and old Brother Butler thought that he was going to withdraw his hand, Wang Sheng stretched out his hand and grabbed the scroll that he had just seen. The housekeeper almost fainted. Uncle Lee, on the other hand, narrowed his eyes as he watched Wang Sheng grab the scroll. Then, nothing happened. Picking up the scroll, Wang Sheng looked at the name on it and shook his head. He put the scroll back in dissatisfaction. With so many movements, if there really was a formation on it, Wang Sheng would have attacked who knew how many times. But the reality was that when Wang Sheng picked it up and put it back, it was like picking up a book from the bookshelf and then putting it back down. It was really easy. Could it be that he missed a scroll? Uncle Lee started to doubt himself. There were tens of thousands of scrolls that needed to be set up one by one. It was very normal for one or two scrolls to be accidentally missed. This Wang Sheng's eyesight was indeed impressive. He actually managed to find a scroll with a mist array formation, as expected of a qualified red card assassin. Just this eyesight alone was worthy of Uncle Lee's praise. At this moment, Uncle Lee no longer had any intention of underestimating Wang Sheng. In a short period of time, Wang Sheng's performance was enough to make Uncle Lee look at him in a different light. Uncle Lee had no choice but to admit that he had misjudged the man at first. However, it was impossible for Uncle Lee to admit his mistake. Who was Uncle Lee? Many of the previous city lords of the worry-free city had to bow respectfully to their elders. So how could they easily admit their mistakes to a junior? So what if he was wrong? So what? You deserve to be here. This is your own bad luck. You can't blame others. Wang Sheng put down the scroll. He didn't withdraw his hand immediately. Instead, he tapped on the scroll with his index finger. After a pause, he continued to move forward. The problem was that Wang Sheng's finger had been on the scroll the entire time. As his body moved forward, his finger naturally moved forward as well. Then, his finger rested on the second scroll, followed by the third. The fourth, as Wang Sheng moved forward, Wang Sheng's finger had already touched at least 30 scrolls. He was still moving forward. Nothing happened on the shelf where the scrolls were stored. The scrolls just lay there quietly. After Wang Sheng's finger touched them, they would move slightly. However, that was all. What offensive formation! What scroll was sealed by a formation? How could there be such a thing? Uncle Lee's eyes widened to the size of copper bells. He might have missed a formation on one scroll, but he had forgotten about dozens of scrolls. How was that possible? Although Uncle Lee was old, he wasn't muddle-headed. How could he have made such a mistake? However, before Uncle Lee could figure out what was going on, Wang Sheng had already walked over to the bookshelf he was pointing at. Uncle Lee, are these the most powerful ones? Wang Sheng turned around and asked Uncle Lee politely with a smile. Chapter 8:15. Uncle Lee's expression was absolutely wonderful. The housekeeper dared to swear on his head that he had never seen such an interesting expression on Uncle Lee's face. That expression of complete disbelief, as if he had seen a monster but could not believe that the monster was right in front of him, could simply be described as wonderful. A kid that Uncle Lee had thought was a cunning kid at first had suddenly displayed a powerful concealment ability. Then, the formation that Uncle Lee had always been proud of was nothing in front of him. Uncle Lee had just casually played with it. How could Uncle Lee put his face? As an elder, not only did he judge people by their appearance, but he was also slapped several times in the face. Even the housekeeper felt that what Wang Sheng had done was simply too satisfying. It did not mean that the housekeeper was on Wang Sheng's side. On this point, the housekeeper could also swear on his life that he was definitely on the Castellan side. Between the Castellan and Uncle Lee, the housekeeper was definitely loyal to the Castellan, not Uncle Lee. Even though Uncle Lee was an elder that even the Castellan respected, the housekeeper would not be loyal to Uncle Lee because of that. He would definitely respect Uncle Lee, but that was all. Uncle Lee's stubbornness and arrogance were too annoying. It was something that the Castellan had clearly agreed to, but when it came to Uncle Lee, there were still twists and turns. What was worse was that from the beginning to the end, Uncle Lee did not give the housekeeper a chance to explain and had been suppressing him with his strength. One had to know that the housekeeper represented the Castellan. As the representative of the Castellan, he did not even have a chance to speak in front of Uncle Lee other than to greet him. One could imagine how angry the housekeeper was. Seeing Uncle Lee being slapped in the face by Wang Sheng's strength, the housekeeper felt indescribable joy in his heart. It was like drinking a glass of cold beer under the hot sun in the hottest days. Awesome. However, just as he felt a little better, the housekeeper suddenly realized that something was wrong. Although there were only 3 people present, since Uncle Lee could be so stubborn and arrogant, he might immediately fall out with them. If Uncle Lee wanted to make a move at this time, Wang Sheng and the housekeeper would not be able to stop Uncle Lee's killer. As expected, Uncle Lee's face obviously darkened. There was already a faint, murderous aura in his eyes that had experienced the vicissitudes of life. In Uncle Lee's heart, if someone dared to play this trick in front of a super expert, then even if he had misjudged them from the start, they should just admit that they were unlucky. However, they still dared to resist. This was the road to death. All of a sudden, Wang Sheng hurled a scroll at Uncle Lee like a concealed weapon. At the same time, Wang Sheng apologized in a voice that could not be any more fake. Uncle Lee, I'm sorry. My hand slipped. If it was just an ordinary scroll that recorded a certain cultivation technique, Uncle Lee would not frown even if there were 10,000 of it. However, it was different this time. It was a cultivation technique scroll from an arsenal that Uncle Lee had personally set up. He did not know which powerful offensive formation it was. Uncle Lee was just about to stretch out his hand to flick the scroll away when he suddenly remembered what it was. His expression changed, and he no longer had any murderous intent towards Wang Sheng. He flung his arm and threw the housekeeper aside. Then, he carefully faced the scroll with both hands. Spiritual energy surged out like a tide and wrapped around the scroll. The poor housekeeper was an expert in the 7th or 8th stage, but he could not resist Uncle Lee at all. He was thrown high up into the air and flew far away. Fortunately, Uncle Lee did not restrict the housekeeper's movements. He was able to turn around in the air, adjust his angle, and land safely. However, the moment he landed, he was still unable to completely dissipate Uncle Lee's force. Tung, tung, tung. He took a few steps back before he could stand firm. Uncle Lee's force was completely unlike that of old Taoist Ling Su's. It was just right, and there was no fire or smoke in it. There was only one word to describe it: violent. Perhaps Uncle Lee did not care about anything else. The moment he caught the scroll, the formation on the scroll was triggered. Boom! The powerful attack landed on Uncle Lee's body. When the scroll was still in the air, Uncle Lee realized that he had caused a huge problem. The consequence of underestimating Wang Sheng was that not only did he have the ability to slap his face, but he also counterattacked the moment he exposed his murderous intent. If they were outside, this formation would not be able to hurt Uncle Lee. He would have the time and speed to escape the attack range of the formation. But not here. Uncle Lee did not dare to escape at all. He had to desperately use all his spiritual energy to block the attack of the formation. He could not let any of it leak out. This was the arsenal. As long as the power of the attack leaked out a little, it would immediately affect the surrounding shelves. Then, the formations on the shelves would be activated in a chain. There were tens of thousands of scrolls, and some of them had more than one formation. There might be more than 100,000 formations in the arsenal. What would happen if they were all activated at the same time? There is no need to even mention Wang Sheng and the butler. They would definitely be smashed to smithereens. Even Uncle Li himself would not be able to withstand such a terrifying attack. Moreover, even if Uncle Li could withstand such a fierce attack, there would only be one outcome for these tens of thousands of scrolls. They would all turn into pieces. Moreover, they would not turn into pieces that could be pieced together. They would turn into dust. Why was Uncle Li staying here? Wasn't it because he wanted to guard the arsenal? If the entire arsenal was destroyed because of him, what would be the point of Uncle Li living underground for decades? Wang Sheng was also very ruthless. He immediately seized the key that Uncle Li had to protect and defend. This forced Uncle Li to use all his strength to protect the scrolls in the arsenal. The formation on the flying scrolls exploded. Not only did Uncle Li have to suppress the power of the formation from spreading, but he also had to protect the scroll inside the formation. This was so hard that he almost grew 3 heads and 6 arms. Boom! Even though the formation had been wrapped up by Uncle Li, the power of the explosion still caused the entire underground cave to tremble. The only fortunate thing was that the sound wave did not trigger any formation, and the arsenal was barely intact. The scroll in Uncle Li's hand was also undamaged under his protection. However, Uncle Li himself was in a somewhat sorry state. He could not care about the protection of his clothes. They had already become beggar's clothes, and they were hanging on his body in strands. Fortunately, the key parts were still covered, and there were no exposed spots. Uncle Li, did you just say that this area is full of scrolls? You haven't answered me yet. Wang Sheng's detestable voice came from that direction. When Uncle Li gritted his teeth and looked over, he saw Wang Sheng holding a scroll in one hand and tossing it up and down, as if he would throw it out again in the next moment. Chapter 8:16. Let alone Uncle Li. Even the housekeeper looked at Wang Sheng with fear as he tossed the 2 scrolls up and down. His face was full of worry. The butler believed that if Uncle Li showed even the slightest bit of killing intent, Wang Sheng would definitely toss the 2 scrolls out again. Furthermore, he would toss them in 2 different directions. Uncle Li would only be able to attend to one and lose sight of the other, resulting in irreversible consequences. Wang Sheng was a ruthless person who dared to lead a large group of experts into the grounds of despair when he was still a nobody. He was definitely a ruthless person who would do anything. Not only was he ruthless to his enemies, but he was also ruthless to himself. Just like now. Since Uncle Li had the intention to kill Wang Sheng did not mind letting everyone die together. Wang Sheng would definitely not be able to defeat Uncle Li in a one-on-one fight, but it would be very easy for Wang Sheng to drag Uncle Li into hell with him. At this moment, Uncle Li's body was in a mess. He stared at Wang Sheng as if he wanted to eat Wang Sheng alive. However, his feet seemed to be nailed to the ground, and he did not dare to move at all. The 2 scrolls in Wang Sheng's hands were like 2 huge bombs that could explode at any time. He used the most direct method to suppress Uncle Li. Uncle Li, who was gnashing his teeth, did not even realize that he had to answer Wang Sheng's question. It was as if he had forgotten about it. However, Wang Sheng did not forget about it. Actually, I have another move that you don't know about, Uncle Li. Wang Sheng did not continue to harp on the previous question. Instead, he smiled and asked Uncle Li, Uncle Li, do you want to know? Uncle Li's eyes were about to spit fire. He stared at Wang Sheng without saying a word. He did not believe that unless Wang Sheng refused to leave the armory, he would definitely have a way to tear Wang Sheng into pieces the moment Wang Sheng left the scrolls. Uncle Li, you can take one of the scrolls next to you, Wang Sheng suggested to Uncle Li. He didn't seem to care whether Uncle Li responded to him or not. Of course, this was a tactful way of putting it. Uncle Li did not want to pay attention to it at all. However, when Wang Sheng almost dropped the scroll in his left hand, Uncle Lee suppressed his anger and unwillingly picked up a scroll from the side. Every array formation on the scrolls here was set up by Uncle Lee. Uncle Lee was a formation master. At close range, by relying on the unique fluctuations of the formation, Uncle Lee was able to determine what kind of formation he had set up on the scroll, and then what kind of method he needed to use to avoid activating it. Protect him well, Wang Sheng reminded Uncle Lee. Uncle Lee immediately wrapped the scroll with his spirit chi. He didn't know why Wang Sheng was doing this. What was he trying to do? Bang! Wang Sheng suddenly uttered an explosive onomatopoeia. The housekeeper didn't know what Wang Sheng was doing, and neither did Uncle Lee. However, the moment Wang Sheng said that, the scroll in Uncle Lee's hand exploded with a bang. The two array formations on it were activated at the same time. In an instant, Uncle Lee used his spirit chi to wrap around the exploding scroll. Not only did he protect the scroll, but he also protected the scrolls on the shelves around him. When the power of the explosion dissipated, Uncle Lee stared at Wang Sheng in shock. It was as if he was looking at a monster. This time, Wang Sheng didn't touch the scroll at all. When Uncle Lee touched it, he discovered that the scroll wasn't tampered with. Moreover, the scroll he chose was not the one that Wang Sheng had just touched. This was Wang Sheng's first time entering the armory, so no matter what, it couldn't be said that Wang Sheng had tampered with it. However, the scroll was so far away, and Wang Sheng hadn't tampered with it. With a command from Wang Sheng, the array formation on it was activated. What did this mean? Although Uncle Lee didn't want to admit it, he had to admit that Wang Sheng was warning him that he had the ability to activate an array formation at any time from such a distance. If Uncle Lee did anything that didn't satisfy Wang Sheng would probably make a move immediately. Uncle Lee, is this the best cultivation technique you mentioned? Wang Sheng asked again in a calm voice with an indisputable tone. His eyes were staring at Uncle Lee with a sharp, killing intent. Yes, Uncle Lee had never felt so humiliated before. However, he had to stand on the spot and endure the humiliation. Wang Sheng was very satisfied with Uncle Lee's attitude. He turned around and didn't even look at Uncle Lee as he asked, "Which two cultivation techniques are suitable for my requirements? This is against the rules." Uncle Lee's eyes were almost on fire. He forcefully suppressed his anger and shouted at Wang Sheng, "You King know the rules?" When Wang Sheng heard Uncle Lee mention the word rules, he immediately cursed. He turned around and swung the scroll in his hand at Uncle Lee. Uncle Lee was shocked. He quickly made a move again. His spirit chi wrapped around the scroll in the air. When it was in Wang Sheng's hand, just now, he already knew what kind of array formation was on the scroll. He used the corresponding method and finally caught the scroll in his hand without triggering it. Just as he was about to flare up, Uncle Lee suddenly restrained himself. His feet were nailed to the ground, and he didn't move at all. His spirit chi told him that all the array formations on the scrolls around him were in a state of restlessness. As long as he made the slightest movement, they would immediately be triggered. What kind of ability is this? Uncle Lee was shocked, and he didn't know how much he regretted it. If he had known that things would turn out like this, he would have obediently given the two cultivation techniques to Wang Sheng. Wang Sheng could have just looked at them and left. Why did he have to feel unhappy and look down on Wang Sheng? Why did he have to make Wang Sheng feel humiliated? Now, the one who had lost face was not Wang Sheng. Instead, it was Uncle Lee, whom he, as the previous city lord, had to respect. What made Uncle Lee feel even more humiliated was that he couldn't even retort when Wang Sheng scolded him. It wasn't that Wang Sheng made the butler speechless like Uncle Lee did to the butler, but he couldn't refute Wang Sheng's questioning. Even if Wang Sheng were to throw scrolls at him, he wouldn't be able to say anything. Rules? Uncle Lee had already broken the rules. What right did he have to question Wang Sheng for not following the rules? To put it bluntly, even if Wang Sheng were to take away all the best cultivation techniques, if Uncle Lee did not wish for the armory to be destroyed, he would have no choice but to stand by and watch. Moreover, Wang Sheng was quite particular. If he said there were two cultivation techniques, he meant it. It was just that he took the scrolls himself, so it wasn't too much. The third level scroll on your left is the second scroll. Uncle Lee had no choice but to grit his teeth and point at Wang Sheng. The fourth level scroll on your right is the fourth scroll from the right. Wang Sheng reached out and casually took the two scrolls. He didn't care about the array formations on them at all. After staring at Uncle Lee, he lowered his head and looked at the cultivation techniques written on the two scrolls. Chapter 817. The scroll in his left hand was called Seven Slaughter Tyrant Saber, while the scroll in his right hand was called Returning Essence Hand. Raising his head, Wang Sheng looked at Uncle Lee with a face full of suspicion. It was as if he suspected that Uncle Lee had given him the worst cultivation technique. Uncle Lee's face surged with anger again, but when Wang Sheng's gaze fell on the first cultivation technique he had chosen for Wang Sheng, he calmed down. Uncle Lee had indeed not chosen the best cultivation technique for Wang Sheng. Since he did not like Wang Sheng, how could he have chosen the best cultivation technique for Wang Sheng? Wang Sheng's suspicion was simply the most normal reaction. However, this reaction made Uncle Lee's face turn red, and he was so angry that he could no longer say anything. Forget it. After a while, Wang Sheng looked at Uncle Lee for a long time, and finally said, "You can be unreasonable, but I can't ignore the rules. I'll just choose these two." After saying that, Wang Sheng stood on the spot and directly opened the Seven Slaughter Tyrant Saber scroll, carefully reading it. This time, Uncle Lee really chose the two strongest cultivation techniques for Wang Sheng. Wang Sheng's previous suspicion made him extremely angry, but his own pride made him unable to explain it to Wang Sheng. Now that Wang Sheng had finally opened up the scroll, Uncle Lee's rage lessened considerably. Wang Sheng looked very carefully, as if he wanted to memorize the contents of the scroll word by word. Uncle Lee sneered in his heart. Even if Wang Sheng could memorize the words, could he also memorize the pictures? Little did he know, Wang Sheng's current memory was almost unbelievably strong. With just one reading, Wang Sheng had memorized most of it. By the second reading, it was basically firmly engraved in his mind. Memory was one thing, but what was even more unbelievable was that the little person with battle intent in his source spirit space had already begun to attack according to the method on the scroll. Of course, whether it was Uncle Lee or the housekeeper, neither of them could see the changes in Wang Sheng's source soul space. In less than half an incense stick's time, Wang Sheng had already rolled up the 7 Kills Tyrant Saber scroll and placed it back on the shelf. When he stuffed it back, Uncle Lee noticed that the formation on the scroll was still ready to be activated at any time. Wang Sheng took it down and looked at it for a long time before rolling it up again. Surprisingly, it did not interfere with the operation of the formation at all. This was the first time Uncle Lee had seen someone treat all sorts of formations as if they were nothing. At the same time, he began to reflect on his attitude and the necessity of installing so many formations in the armory. As an old monster who was over 100 years old, anger and pride were necessary, but not the main ones. He wasn't a hot-blooded hothead. He wouldn't say that Wang Sheng had treated him like this today and that he must immediately kill Wang Sheng to appease the hatred in his heart. More importantly, an old monster who had lived for such a long time always knew how to reflect and change in time. First of all, Uncle Lee was very clear that he had definitely been rude. It was his biggest mistake to treat a super strong assassin as a hooligan who had used crooked methods to become a red card assassin. He judged people by their appearance and was obstinate and self-opinionated. It was not wrong for him to be attacked by Wang Sheng. Secondly, Uncle Lee realized that he had made a huge mistake by setting up formations on every cultivation technique scroll in the armory. Originally, it was to protect the cultivation techniques and the armory. Only now did he realize that every scroll had become a ticking time bomb that could threaten all the treasures in the armory. If not for Wang Sheng, Uncle Lee would not have been able to realize that there was such a big loophole in his arrangements. Previously, Uncle Lee had indeed been careless. He thought that with his cultivation and attainments and formations, no one would be able to touch the cultivation technique manuals in the armory without him noticing. But now, he realized that if Wang Sheng wanted to come in, He had no confidence that he would be able to discover him. Formations were definitely the biggest mistake of all. If someone tried to destroy the armory, all they had to do was to activate a formation and the entire armory would be destroyed. He didn't need anyone's help. Uncle Li's array formation was the greatest arsenal killer. After Wang Sheng left, the first thing Uncle Li did was to immediately close the entrance to the armory. Then, other than the formation in the passageway, he had to remove all the formations on the scrolls one by one. The safety of the armory required other, more reliable methods. He needed to discuss it with the mayor and not rely on his own self-confidence. Fortunately, Wang Sheng had given him a tight slap when he was feeling proud of himself. This caused Uncle Li to wake up and realize his mistake. Otherwise, based on the cultivation speed of the experts in the Grounds of Despair, it would not be long before the armory of the worry-free city was destroyed by those experts. From this point of view, not only could Uncle Li not resent Wang Sheng, but he also had to thank Wang Sheng for giving him such a reminder, giving him a chance to correct his mistakes and make up for his loopholes, so as to avoid more serious consequences. While Uncle Li was pondering with a red face, Wang Sheng had already opened the second scroll, Elemental Palm. He also read it twice. The first time, he basically memorized it, and the second time, he memorized it completely. At the same time, a small person with combat awareness started to imitate it. When he heard the sound of Wang Sheng placing the second scroll back on the shelf, Uncle Li woke up from his thoughts. When he saw that Wang Sheng's hands were empty, he was also puzzled. What was Wang Sheng trying to do? Uncle Li was not the only one who was puzzled. The housekeeper was also puzzled. Wang Sheng had spent so much effort, almost offending Uncle Li to death, just to get his hands on 2 cultivation technique scrolls. Yet, he had only flipped through them for a short while, and that was it. According to the rules, Wang Sheng could read the 2 scrolls in the hall outside for an entire day. However, Wang Sheng had already put them down. Was it because he was dissatisfied, or did he not want to continue reading them? The 2 of them could not imagine how monstrous Wang Sheng's memory was. Wang Sheng did not explain further. He turned to the housekeeper and asked, "Brother, if we leave now, is it against the rules?" At this moment, Uncle Li could no longer suppress the housekeeper. The housekeeper nodded, yes. After saying that, he turned to look at Uncle Li, waiting for him to nod. Seeing Wang Sheng and the housekeeper looking at him, Uncle Li snorted coldly. "Your legs belong to you. It's up to you if you want to stay or leave. Since that's the case, brother, let's go." Wang Sheng smiled and ignored Uncle Li. He walked out the door. Uncle Li stood on the spot, watching Wang Sheng and the housekeeper leave. His face turned red and white, and no one knew what he was thinking. "All right, Uncle Li, it's too stupid to put a formation on all the scrolls." Just as they were about to leave, Wang Sheng stopped and said to Uncle Li, "I think it's better to dismantle them and find another way. Also, killing is not allowed in the inner city of Carefree City. If Uncle Li wants to find me, I'll be waiting for you outside of Carefree City." Chapter 8:18. Did Uncle Li dare to chase after him? Of course not. He did not dare to take the risk of Wang Sheng activating the formation from so far away. He could only watch as Wang Sheng and the housekeeper walked out the door. Out of fear that Wang Sheng would misunderstand, Uncle Li stood rooted to the spot, not daring to move at all. He listened as Wang Sheng and the butler walked out of the door into the stairway, up and down, and out of the formation outside. Only then did he hastily activate the formation in the entire passageway. Uncle Li let out a long sigh of relief. He looked at the arrogant formation that sealed the armory in front of him and suddenly felt an indescribable feeling. There was self-blame and regret, but most of all, there was anger. Wang Sheng had talked back to him in front of the city lord's housekeeper. It was equivalent to slapping him dozens of times in the face and degrading the thing he was most proud of to nothing. However, Uncle Li could not refute it all. He could only watch as Wang Sheng wreaked havoc and left. How could Uncle Li tolerate such humiliation? If it had been someone with a bad temper, they would have immediately chased after Wang Sheng. No matter where they were, they would have to kill Wang Sheng. However, Uncle Li was not an ordinary person. He was an old monster who had lived for more than 100 years, and he had enough patience. Since Wang Sheng dared to say that when he left, it meant that he was certain that he would win. Uncle Li could not immediately abandon the armory to chase after Wang Sheng. That was Uncle Li's responsibility. After leaving the small courtyard, the couple in the courtyard did not even look at Wang Sheng and the housekeeper. They let them walk out of the street as if nothing had happened. Only then did the housekeeper's breathing return to normal. He looked at Wang Sheng with admiration. Over the years, he had personally led at least 80 people to the armory, if not 100. Yet, none of them had been able to remain calm when facing Uncle Li. The only exception was Wang Sheng. How could Wang Sheng be described as calm? From Uncle Li's point of view, Wang Sheng was already lawless and out of control. If it was an ordinary red card assassin, he would have been killed by Uncle Li countless times. However, Wang Sheng just had to slap them in the face, and he even swaggered out. When he was inside, there was a moment when the housekeeper was really scared. He wasn't afraid that something would happen to Wang Sheng, but he was afraid that Uncle Li would get angry out of humiliation. He was afraid that others would see his embarrassing side, so he would kill the housekeeper to silence him. Fortunately, it was not to that extent. The housekeeper followed Wang Sheng out unscathed. Even now, the butler's clothes were wet inside. After catching his breath, the butler gave Wang Sheng a thumbs up, but he immediately shook his head and said, "Little brother, although what you did was very satisfying, you have already offended Uncle Li. Listen to this old brother's advice. You should leave Carefree City for a while. I'm afraid Uncle Li will come looking for you as soon as he's done with the armory. Listen to advice, eat your fill." Of course, Wang Sheng wouldn't be arrogant enough to look down on an old monster like Uncle Li. If it wasn't for Uncle Li pressuring him, Wang Sheng would have left after reading the manual. The housekeeper's words made sense, so Wang Sheng immediately thanked him and went back to make the arrangements. As for the housekeeper, he naturally had to hurry back to the city lord's mansion and report the matter to the city lord. Such a big thing happened in the armory. It would be a dereliction of duty not to report it to the city lord. In less than a quarter of an hour after the housekeeper returned to the mansion, dozens of special red card assassins came out of the mansion, each taking a different route to the small courtyard. In another 15 minutes, Uncle Li would arrive at the city lord's mansion. Who was that kid? Uncle Li entered the city lord's mansion. In the guest hall of the city lord's mansion, he faced the new city lord who was a little too young. There was no joy or sorrow on his face as he coldly asked, "He's the youngest red card assassin in Worry-Free City, Lone Wolf." The young city lord's voice was clear and melodious. He said calmly and naturally to Uncle Li, "Uncle Li, I know what happened. You must have misunderstood something. Didn't he kill hundreds and thousands of people to accumulate the points to become a red card assassin?" Uncle Li had actually calmed down by now. He found a place to sit down and asked the city lord. "That's right." The city lord stretched out his hand, and the housekeeper personally served tea to Uncle Li. Uncle Li's expression didn't change as he picked up the tea the housekeeper served and drank it. Then he said, "It's about this number, probably about 1,000 people. Other than less than a tenth of them, the rest were all stronger than Lone Wolf. He killed at least 900 people with higher cultivation than him." This time, Uncle Li was no longer as calm as before. How is this possible? Uncle Li had killed many people, but most of them were weaker than him. How could he be like Wang Sheng, who killed people stronger than him? If they were to compare, Wang Sheng was the real deal. Lone Wolf only appeared in recent years. The city lord nodded and said, "Almost every person he killed has been recorded. Housekeeper, tell Uncle Li about it." "Yes." The housekeeper, who had been waiting by the side, took over the conversation and said, "Lone Wolf first entered the grounds of Thousand Despair because he was being chased by all the large clans. When he entered Worry-Free City, he was still in the lower realm. He was chased all the way into the grounds of Thousand Despair and killed more than 300 experts from the large clans. Among them, there were more than 10 fifth-degree realm experts, and the rest were 4th or 3rd-degree realm experts. The weakest was also 3rd-degree realm. Why was he being chased by the large clans? Uncle Lee became interested and asked curiously when he heard that a nobody was being chased by all the big families. First, he killed the young master of the Dai family, Dai Huan, and more than 10 guards. Then, he killed the Dai family's foreign affairs elder, Dai Lao Si. At that time, everyone had a tacit understanding to restrain the fifth-degree realm experts from showing off outside, so the fourth-degree realm Dai Lao Si was already very powerful. The housekeeper replied quickly. Later, he killed a disciple from the Sher family side branch. News spread that he had mastered the secret of raising the level of one's spirit and was chased by the large clans. After coming to Worry-Free City, did he kill any other big shots? Uncle Lee was really shocked this time. For a young lad to be able to kill so many experts, it was definitely not luck and luck. Relying on these, he can't become a red card killer. When he was in the second-degree realm, he killed the Dai family's seventh-degree realm elder, Dai Wuji. After that, he killed more than 10 eighth and ninth-degree realm experts, including the Dai family's grand elder. The housekeeper seemed to have a fresh memory of Wang Sheng's history. The moment he asked the question, the other side immediately replied. More than 100 7th, 8th, and ninth-degree realm expert from Triumph Palace were all killed by him in one night. Because of Lone Wolf, a hidden sect was annihilated, Victorious Return Country was destroyed, and many of the legendary realm experts who died in the core area of the Grounds of Thousand Despair are still on his head. Hiss! Uncle Lee sucked in a breath of cold air. Why didn't you say anything at that time? Chapter 819. Why didn't I say it back then? The butler almost wanted to spit on Uncle Lee's face. King wanted to say it back then, but you should have let me say it. Unfortunately, only Wang Sheng could mock Wang Sheng like this. The butler would never have dared to do so in front of the city lord and Uncle Lee. Now that he thought about it, Wang Sheng's words, "You King know the rules too?" Then, the feeling of a scroll smashing down on his face was really refreshing. He really wanted to copy Wang Sheng and throw the tea tray at Uncle Lee's head. Unfortunately, the butler didn't dare to do so. He couldn't say that it was Uncle Lee's fault, could he? The butler had no choice but to take the blame on himself. Damn it. After being humiliated by Uncle Lee, I still have to take the blame for him. How King uncomfortable. Fortunately, before the butler could admit his mistake, Uncle Lee took the initiative to apologize. I remember now, it was my fault for not letting you speak. At least you still know some shame, the butler said in his heart. Of course, he only dared to imagine this in his mind. He didn't dare to say a word. He made a great contribution to Carefree City. What contribution? Uncle Lee's face was slightly red. Because he judged a person by their appearance, he had suppressed a real red card assassin. If other red card assassins were dissatisfied because of this, it would be a huge problem for Carefree City. Therefore, Uncle Lee had to find out how Wang Sheng was able to obtain 2 cultivation techniques. The young city lord seemed to be a little helpless. He let out a long sigh and gestured to the butler. The butler immediately began to explain to Uncle Lee. Just from the bounties on the people Lone Wolf kills, Carefree City takes almost 10 million gold coins as a commission, the butler said in a leisurely manner. Even though 10 million gold coins is not a small amount, it shouldn't be a great contribution, right? Uncle Lee said with a forced logic. Lone Wolf opened the gate to the land of 1,000 extremities. Those who wanted to enter the land of 1,000 extremities had to pass through Worry-Free City for a long period of time. Because of this, Worry-Free City earned tens of millions of gold coins. The butler quickly listed out the second item. He didn't say anything else and only used the number of gold coins. It was simple and clear. Uncle Lee's expression turned serious. A person who could bring tens of millions of gold coins to Worry-Free City could indeed be said to have made a huge contribution. When Lone Wolf first came to the Worry-Free City, he gave the city lord a spice business. No one would have thought that he would do such a thing. The butler continued counting the profits that Wang Sheng had brought in with his fingers. Just this business alone brings in at least 150 million gold coins per year. That's every year. Only gold coins? Uncle Lee's face was becoming more and more embarrassed. The more he understood, the more he realized that he had made a huge mistake. Where'd he put his old face? Lone Wolf also gave Carefree City a campsite close to the core of the lands of Thousand Despair, and waived the fee of 20 million gold coins. At this moment, the housekeeper was already very satisfied with what he had said. He had put Uncle Lee on the spot one by one. He was really happy. Putting aside the value of a campsite that was close to the core of the grounds of despair, how many experts could it nurture for the Carefree City? Other than gold coins, there were also other things that were related to the foundation of the worry-free city. If this wasn't considered a great contribution, what was? In addition, Lone Wolf recently partnered with the Imperial Treasury and the worry-free city for a wine business. The butler continued to mention the most recent piece of news. This business only has a profit of tens of millions of gold coins at the moment. But in the next few years, it could be expected that the annual income will not be less than 200 million gold coins. Also, just a few days ago, Lone Wolf personally went to the core of the lands of Thousand Despair and drew a detailed map of the outer circle of the core. He gave a map to the worry-free city for free and entrusted it to be sold. The housekeeper also told Uncle Lee about what had happened 2 days ago. Of course, the worry-free city also earned some gold coins, but that 10 million gold coins is not worth mentioning. When gold coins were counted in the hundreds of millions every year, even if there was nothing else, just the gold coins alone was enough to be considered a great contribution. Uncle Lee was already starting to feel a little uneasy. Even though his cultivation was the highest in the City Lord's manor, when facing the City Lord, it was obvious that his cultivation was not enough to control the situation. When logic failed, no matter how strong one's cultivation was, it was useless. At this moment, Uncle Lee was in such a state. He was obviously in a difficult position. Uncle Lee has been guarding the armory all this time. It's normal that you don't know the situation outside. The City Lord finally opened his mouth and helped Uncle Lee out of the predicament. It's not a crime if you don't know. This time, it's not a bad thing. At least we discovered the flaws in the armory. I'm afraid that Uncle Lee will have to work hard to rearrange the armory. It's my duty. Uncle Lee was indeed pleased. When he heard that the City Lord had cleared up his mistake, he heaved a sigh of relief. He was limited by his promise to guard the armory for the worry-free city for 100 years. He didn't want to be unable to fulfill his promise because of the armory's problems. After talking about the armory, Uncle Lee was about to leave when he suddenly thought of a problem that he had previously neglected. He hurriedly asked the housekeeper, "You said that he knows the secret of upgrading the source spirit?" Yes, he was the one who sold the secret through the worry-free city. The housekeeper replied respectfully, "Tell me what happened at that time." Uncle Lee's expression became serious. He hurriedly told the housekeeper what happened at that time. The housekeeper didn't dare to delay. He quickly told him what happened when Wang Sheng auctioned the secret of upgrading the source spirit. When Uncle Lee heard that Wang Sheng's secret of upgrading the source spirit was because his source spirit was originally a source spirit that could be upgraded, he immediately frowned. Did he really say that? Uncle Lee was very dissatisfied. How could such a person use such a method to fool the various powers? Wasn't he afraid of being punished in the future? Impossible. Uncle Lee stared at the housekeeper and seriously said, "What else did he say? Don't leave out a single word. What else did he say?" The housekeeper furrowed his brows as he frantically tried to recall the situation. He finally remembered something and quickly replied, "That's right. He said a joke at the beginning." After saying that, he told the housekeeper about the joke that Wang Sheng had said. Relying on unyielding faith, he firmly believed that his source spirit would definitely be able to upgrade. When Uncle Lee heard Wang Sheng's joke, a smile suddenly appeared on his face. This person is interesting, very interesting. Once I'm done organizing the armory, I'll go out and find him. Uncle Lee laughed heartily as he walked out of the room, ignoring the City Lord and the butler. In the City Lord's mansion, the City Lord and the housekeeper looked at each other in dismay. They didn't know what Uncle Lee was laughing about. Chapter 820. Unfortunately, Uncle Lee did not want to explain anything to the castellan and the housekeeper. He had lost face in front of the castellan and the housekeeper before, and it was time to vent their anger. Wang Sheng, on the other hand, was really interesting. He already knew such a secret when he was still a nobody. What was Wang Sheng's true identity? It was really hard to figure out. In this world, Wang Sheng knew that there were at most 4 people who could understand Wang Sheng's joke. One was Wang Sheng himself, one was the old Taoist Ling Su, one was Song Yin, and the last one was probably Uncle Li. But now, Wang Sheng certainly did not care whether Uncle Li could really understand his joke or not. The housekeeper had reminded him to avoid it as soon as possible, so Wang Sheng naturally followed his advice and immediately made arrangements. The old Taoist Ling Su would definitely go back with Wang Sheng, so there was no need to worry about on the way or here. On the other hand, if Aki stayed here, Uncle Li might vent his anger on her if he was really unscrupulous. After thinking about it, Wang Sheng gave Aki 2 choices. She could either follow Wang Sheng back to the capital, or Aki could go directly to the land of Thousand Despair and practice in the Imperial Treasury's camp. Aki could choose. Obviously, Aki did not want to follow Wang Sheng back to the capital to face Meyer, and she was even more unwilling to compete with more than 600 beautiful women for Wang Sheng's favor. She still liked to practice and practice in the land of Thousand Despair, so she firmly chose to go there. People who had been killers were indeed different. Wang Sheng's eyes swept over Aki's slender legs, which were wearing protective clothing, and suddenly felt a little apologetic. "I'm sorry, I got you into trouble this time." Although Wang Sheng didn't say what happened, it was obvious that Wang Sheng had some disagreements with the castellan after going out with the castellan's butler. Moreover, he wanted Aki to leave. Aki didn't ask. She just smiled at Wang Sheng and said nothing. She began to pack her luggage and was ready to leave at any time. "The next time we meet, I'll give you a dagger you like." Wang Sheng remembered that Aki wanted a good dagger last time. Wang Sheng decided to give Aki a good dagger next time as compensation. Aki nodded non-committally, still not saying anything. Wang Sheng let out a long sigh. He reached out and hugged Aki tightly. Feeling her body tremble, Wang Sheng gently patted Aki's back and said softly, "Be careful, don't die." When she heard this, Aki's body trembled again. When she looked at Wang Sheng again, there was a subtle change in her expression, but it quickly returned to normal. Wang Sheng watched as Aki walked out of his sight. Only then did he order the guards to leave with him. All his belongings in Carefree City were left to the 2 maids and the chef. No matter how immoral Uncle Li was, he wouldn't make things difficult for the 2 maids and the chef in Carefree City's inner city. Old Taoist Ling Su had always been dressed like a red card killer. He left with Wang Sheng's team and didn't say anything. They went all the way out of Carefree City. It wasn't until they were far away from the city and on the official road that old Taoist Ling Su asked, "What happened? Why are you in such a hurry to leave? Didn't you go to the armory to get the cultivation method?" Damn it, that Uncle Li is crazy. The moment Wang Sheng thought of what had happened in the armory, he could not help but feel a wave of anger. Calming himself down, he recounted everything that had happened in the armory to old Taoist Ling Su. After he finished, he asked, "Do you think there's something wrong with this guy? Before you, every red card killer was at least in the middle of the 8th degree realm." After listening, old Taoist Ling Su's reaction was not as big as Wang Sheng's. He said slowly, "If it was you, and a young man suddenly came and said he was a red card killer, would you be suspicious?" "I went with the city lord's butler." Wang Sheng didn't care about that. He directly threw out his reason. "You don't trust me, but you don't trust the city lord's butler?" He didn't let the butler speak the whole time. "I've never seen such an obstinate master." Old Taoist Ling Su seemed to have a better understanding of Uncle Li as he asked slowly, "If you were to stay in that underground place for several decades and finally meet someone who you feel is not right, what would you do?" "So, you are treating me like a toy." Wang Sheng spat in contempt. Now that he thought about it, that guy was indeed a little abnormal. He must have gone crazy after decades of isolation. However, it worked out well. He still got what he wanted. The 7 kills he, Gem and Saber, and Essence fusing hand seemed to be very powerful. However, he did not have the time to analyze them. He just had to wait for the combat consciousness miniature person to study them carefully. Then, Wang Sheng would be able to learn them. There was time on the way. Wang Sheng was also pondering the mystery of these two techniques. Old Taoist Ling Su was by his side. He couldn't help but ask him about many things. However, Wang Sheng didn't start cultivating. Instead, he practiced the Taoist scripture of calmness every day on time. In the soul space, the two hind legs of the Ba Wei had begun to show faint stripes of riches. The dozen or so guards were all disciples of the Lao Jun Temple. Along the way, old Taoist Ling Su found an opportunity to change his identity from the legendary red card assassin back to his original identity. These disciples became even more respectful. Along the way, the guards put on the signboard of Duke Chongqing's mansion. There weren't many of them, but they were unusually prestigious. No one harassed the territories of the major vassal states along the way. Instead, there are local officials of the vassal states who gave Wang Sheng some gifts of local specialties in the name of their king. They were very enthusiastic. Of course, they were just local specialties. There was nothing precious. In terms of gold coins, Duke Chongqing's wealth was comparable to that of a country. In terms of high-grade things, the best things in the world almost all came from Duke Chongqing's mansion. It was meaningless to give these gifts. On the contrary, some local specialties were not extravagant and relatively close, which was enough. Of course, the journey was not much faster. It took a month to walk from Carefree City back to the capital. Finally, they arrived at their destination and returned to the capital. Counting the days since Wang Sheng left the capital, it had been more than 4 or 5 months since Wang Sheng left. He didn't know what changes had happened in the capital. As soon as Wang Sheng entered the capital, all parties got the news almost immediately. At that time, dozens of messenger birds flew out, presumably to report Wang Sheng's whereabouts. All the way back to the Duke's mansion, Mayor had already heard the news and was waiting in her stomach. When she saw Wang Sheng, she was only happy for a moment. Then she immediately said to Wang Sheng worriedly, "Duke, something happened to Sister Rosa. Go and save Sister Rosa." You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.